Hey, welcome back to the Métropole Grid. My name is Andre. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today we have a deck dive for you on a deck that I think could easily win Worlds. This is Reavershop, and it's a deck list uploaded by Pinsel on behalf of the NWE, a Netrunner testing group, a play group, otherwise known as the New World Order. In fact, the New World Order, they're a European testing group, they have their own YouTube channel, and just the other week, Lost Geek uploaded this really good video talking about deck building and building jank. I'd highly recommend it. The link is in the description below. I would not recommend searching New World Order on YouTube. Your suggestions get really strange really fast. Now, Worlds is just in a couple days, and the stream will be up again on twitch.tv/nullsignalnetrunner. This is the new Project Nisei Twitch channel. Again, they did change their name just a couple weeks ago, link in the description. But unfortunately, at Worlds, NWE won't be there. So they kind of called their shot and posted the list that they said their players would be playing if they were to attend Worlds. And this deck looks pretty good, and it is quite good. Now, if you've been following the last competitive month or so of Netrunner, you saw a lot of the Shaper endurance-based Shaper decks. And these decks had to change considerably over the last month. We recently got a new ban list about 3 weeks ago, and that ban list really targeted this deck. This is the deck that Sokka played during the Continental season and kind of swept through the Continental season after that, different versions of this deck. But you notice these exclamation marks are cards that are now been banned. And it's largely the economy package of these decks that got targeted. These are cards like Rizeki and cards like Pad Tap, which are economy cards that you just put down and they kind of just pay out. And so you're not really considering, you're not really worrying about your econ engine. It doesn't take a lot of thought to figure these cards out. And they do generate, specifically Rizeki, they generate ridiculous economy the longer the game goes. And that's something that Null Signal has kind of cracked down on. They've banned these cards. So the question was, how do Shaper decks generate enough economy to be, quite playable, especially when they all want to play 8 credits for a giant boat? And the answer was likely Aesop's Pawnshop. This is a card that goes back all the way to the original core set in 2012, and it's a very powerful card. You saw many, many very competitive Shaper decks based off of this. The idea is that you can install enough cards, cards that are either not useful in certain matchups, cards that are cheap and efficient, and then you can sell them. So at the start of your turn, you're getting 3 credits, clicklessly. You did have to install the card, so it did really cost a click, but that's a very powerful economy engine, and that's kind of where we ended up here. This deck is actually very similar to a deck that was posted. It was the deck list of the week on Netrunner DB almost 2 months ago. And this is Crit HD20's Meta Breaker Wu, and you find that this list is actually quite similar, but there's been made some very important changes, and these are largely reactions to the modern meta. Now, Worlds is in a couple days, and the last deck dive as well, I did play, and this is a standard deck. So if you're a starter player, you might feel a bit overwhelmed here. But again, I want to say 2 big things. Firstly, in the upcoming video, we are going to go out of the way to show on screen any of the standard cards that I talk about that you don't see on screen. And I'm hoping that this will help you understand this deck, but also understand corporations on the other side of the table. So when you're watching Worlds, you might get a bit more out of the experience. On top of that, this deck is basically 80 to 90% a startup deck. In fact, there are only 7 unique card names in this deck that are standard only cards. So I promise you, if you're still intimidated about standard, you're like most of the way to understanding how this deck works. So let's talk through it. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the resource engine because, again, this is an Aesop's Pawnshop deck, and this is where the majority of the economy from this deck comes. While we have a couple events that get you money, the majority of the work is done by this. And the idea with Aesop's Pawnshop, you want to install things and you want to sell things. And what a better way to start than with Harbinger. This is a standard only card, and you might be confused by the coloring or the logo there. This is an Apex card. Yeah, outside of the Criminal, the Anarch, and the Shaper, in Standard, there's actually 3 mini factions, runner factions that have very small card pools, and Apex is one of them. And Apex has this card, Harbinger, for 1 influence, it costs nothing, it takes up no MU, and it literally does nothing. However, when it's trashed, it installs itself face down, and a face down card, mind you, has no type, has no text, it's just a card. And the idea with this card is you install it for 1 click, and now you can sell it twice. First time with Pawnshop, flips it face over, and another time after that. That makes this a 6 credit economy card with an Aesop's engine over 2 turns, and that's phenomenal. We're playing 3 of these because it's one of the best economy cards for an Aesop's engine. Now, the engine of this deck is even further bolstered by another Apex card, and that's where the name of this deck comes from, Reavershop. It comes from this card called Reaver. This is a 4 influence card. It's a 1 of in the deck. However, we can get it consistently very early in the game. This says the first time each turn that we trash an installed card, mind you, it can be the corpse card, but more often than not, it's a runner card, we also draw a card. So as long as we have a Reaver down and we're consistently pawning things at the start of our turn, that Harbinger now becomes 6 credits and 2 cards. And you see where the value engine, the proposition behind this deck gets very, very compelling. And of course, like any Netrunner card that says the first time a turn you do something, this also counts on the corpse turn. And this deck actually has a fair few ways to trash our installed cards on the corporation's turn. The first big include here, and this is a big meta call, this is no free lunch. This is one of the new zero cost trash at instant speed cards. We saw 2 of these that came out in Midnight Sun, and this is no free lunch. We're playing it because on the worst case scenario, we can trash this on the corporation's turn to gain 3 credits and draw a card, because it's the first time a turn we trash an installed card on the corpse turn. On top of that, you can always remove a tag. This is really important. This deck is running 3 of these, and mind you, the economy package of this deck is entirely attached to resources, so it's really important we protect our resources from tags. Going into the Worlds, there is a fair bit still of these NBN prison type decks that are going out of the way to play Drago over and over again, and then using the tag from this to either trash resources or inflict other sorts of damage. Princess Space Kitten just played this one undefeated in Spanish Nationals, and you're going to see lists like this pretty consistently out of many of the NBN IDs at Worlds. So this is not only a good card in the deck, but it's also a flexible card in the matchups where you don't need the tag prevention. In those, you can either pawn it or just trash it yourself on the corpse turn, 3 credits, draw a card. Fantastic. Very easy to play. Now, a lot of these Shaper lists end up looking very different to some of the Anarchs and some of the Criminals you're used to. Looking at this, we have 10 programs that are not icebreakers, and a lot of these are singleton one-ofs in the deck. And the idea is that using our ability, using self-modifying code, we can find the exact program that we need for the certain matchup for the certain point in time that we need them. So the idea, like Shaper can often do, is we can produce really elegant solutions to very specific problems, and we can deal with certain matchups the best that any runner could imagine. And I guess that's about a good time to talk about Kabonesa Wu. Kabonesa Wu is the runner that came out in the Katara cycle, the Shaper runner, and her ability is phenomenally powerful. For a click, you can search your deck for a program. It has to be a non-virus. We're not running any viruses. And you can install it with a reduced cost of 1. It's amazing. That can pull any of these very elegant problems, any of the breakers we need on the turn that we need them for, for a discount. That's fantastic. But there is a condition attached to this. If the program stays installed at the end of the turn, you're going to have to remove it from the game. Now, sometimes that's okay to produce something, get value from it, and let it go out of the game. But a lot of times you're going to want to try and play around that because you can often install the cards from your heap. So it's in your best interest to sometimes over-install, play another program to trash a card before it's removed from the game so that you can pull it later when you need it with, again, cards like Simulchip. So the idea here is we're running a lot of singleton, very niche silver bullet cards for certain matchups. And the write-up actually talks with which card is very good for certain matchups. So looking here, Misdirection, in a lot of matchups, this might be a totally useless card, but the floor for useless cards is actually not that low in this deck, considering we can always just pawn it to the pawn shop, get 3 credits, draw a card. Misdirection allows you to deal with a massive amount of tags at a huge cost reduction, let alone click reduction, and this gives you so much breathing room into some of the bigger tag punishments you can see in the standard format. Similarly to that, we have Prisha, which if you're playing into a matchup that runs a lot of assets, this is just 2 credits a turn, that's a massive amount of economy, and in the other matchups, you can just go sell it. We have self-modifying code. This is super important to understand. This is the card that you want to pull from your deck a lot of the times with Kabonesa Wu. Kabonesa, again, at the end of the turn, she will remove the program she's pulled from the game if it stays on the table. So if you want to get something more permanently, you can just use Kabonesa's ability to go get the self-modifying code, and then at instant speed, crack the self-modifying code to get the thing that you really wanted from your deck and keep it permanently. It's massively important, and it's one of the big reasons why we can play Reaver in this deck and consistently get it as soon as turn 1. As long as you have 4 credits, turn 1, you can always produce your Reaver and you're always set up to get your engine. Let alone you can use this to pull any of the silver bullets you need, let alone any of the breakers. This is the fundamental card behind Shaper toolbox design. We also have a Stargate. This is our only multi-axis. This is eventually in the mid to late game how we're going to close games, or in the early game if we're really aggressive in certain matchups. And finally, we have Takobi, one of the other standard only cards, and a card you don't actually see a lot. And it's really surprising and refreshing to see it in this matchup. And it's a card that was very specifically added to this deck to give this deck some legs into the glacier, into the long late game corporations that are going to put 2 or 3 ice on every servers. The idea with Takobi is when you break all of the subroutines on a piece of ice, you can put a power counter on here, and then you can trade 2 power counters to boost one of your programs plus 3 strength at instant speed. That can be a lot of money, especially once you see what our breakers look like. And the idea is that if you get down to Takobi early, and then of course, this is Shaper, we are playing 3x endurance, you can go start sailing through things with your endurance, and then using those power counters and basically slowly moving them over to your Takobi. And so into mid to late game, when you actually end up producing breakers, your breakers are going to be breaking through everything for fair few credits. So that's fantastic. And it's a card you don't install in a lot of matchups, but in the matchups that you need that extra push into the late game to deal with a lot of ice, where your endurance can't get through enough things, oh, it's very, very valuable. Otherwise, if we talk about the resources, we'll get back to the programs. Of course, we're on 3 Aesop's Pawnshop, 3 no free lunch. Now, Daily Cast is just about good in every deck, but it's even better in this one. On its own, it's a 5-credit card over a long enough period of time, but with access to Aesop's Pawnshop, we can actually sell this for a 6th credit before it ticks out. So this means that you can get paid out from this card a bit more. It becomes a 6-credit economy card, and you can get paid out actually a turn faster. It's quite nice. And finally, we have Beth Kilrain Chang. Again, another standard-only card that you see a one of in just about every shaper list. Her ability is just kind of nonsense powerful. In just about any matchup, it's going to give you some value, and if the corp isn't less than 4 credits, you're probably doing okay anyway, so it's really hard to find a reason not to put this in your deck as at least a one of. We talked about the hardware 3 endurance. Again, we're playing shaper, we want to get that boat down. It is our early game solution that's now backed up by a very powerful mid to late game economy engine with Aesop's Pawnshop, and we have 3 simulship. And this thing's so important. Figuring out how to use this, again, it's one of the cards that we can crack on the opponent's turn to trash a card to draw with Reaver if we really need to. But this allows us, again, a lot of the times I'm using this just to reinstall a Harbinger, just so I can get 6 more credits and 2 more card draw. But we have so many very interesting breakers that are very good the turn they're installed. We have all these like silver bullets that we can throw out and then bring back our misdirection later. Simulship is so good. You can even use this, as long as you haven't trashed a program this turn, to be able to install something with Kabonesa and then trash it to the simulship to reinstall it permanently if you need to. Might not be the best use of the simulchip, but in a pinch, that can do it. If we talk about the breakers are kind of interesting. Cleaver, you see this a lot in startup, almost never in standard. But the idea is that this is a very efficient breaker as long as you're not struggling with the strength. So the idea is with Takobi and endurance, that means you'll get those free Takobi counters, and then this either gets through the cheap stuff really cheaply, or with the Takobi, it gets through the big stuff cheaply that you're not endurancing through. This is really cool because you almost never see this in standard, and this is quite a good home for this card. Top of that, we have Oiler. It is a shaper decoder. It's really good the turn it's installed, whether you pull it with Kabonesa or reinstall it with the simulchip. This is phenomenal. And it's another card, once it's done enough, you can just pawn it and bring it back later. Ika, this is probably the worst part of the deck. A lot of times you're going to use your endurance to break sentries just because the killer here is not very good. It's kind of cumbersome to move it around. It's not too expensive to deal with some of the bigger stuff, but if you're dealing with a lot of smaller stuff, let's say like 2 drafters in a row, it's a bit of a nightmare. But it's in the deck, so you have an option there, but a lot of times you're hoping not to have to use it. And then finally, we have a propeller. This is our 2nd fractor in the list, and this fractor is good. It's another very cheap fractor that you can get down early and eventually pawn it, but it deals with a lot of the, the lower strength barriers for just credits. And again, pawn it, bring it back with simulship, we're good to go. And finally, the events. A lot of the events here aren't particularly flashy. We have 3x Creative Commission just for some burst economy. Similarly, 3x Sure Gamble, can't go wrong with that. We have some Diesel for some card draw. It's important to get set up pretty quickly and get the cards you need. We have 2 Overclock. This on its own is a good enough card, but it's even better once you have 2 self-modifying code. The idea is that Kabonesa can pull one of these from the deck, and then you can just overclock archives, or HQ, whatever it is, and then use the credits from the overclock to pay for the self-modifying code, to pay to go find the program that you actually wanted from your deck. So that helps a lot with the credit savings. We have a single Mad Dash. I think this is like the final standard only card. And this is just such an important card in the meta. You'll see in some matchups, I wish we had 2 of them. I think there's a reason you could consider it. But the idea with this card is that if you connect this run event with an agenda, you get an additional agenda point. And currently the way that agenda structures exist in corp decks, this can change your runner deck from having to steal 3 agendas to 2 agendas, or from 4 to 3. And that can shave just turns off of your game. It's entire turns. So finding this when you need it to steal the last agenda point so you don't have to steal another agenda is just massively powerful. And the way we get this to connect is largely with Stargate. Our multi-axis, our disruption. You can see an agenda, put into archives, leave it on top of the deck, Mad Dash back. And then lastly, I think we have 3 spec work. This is a really cool card. For a long time, this card was discarded. It was not considered because it was just a worse version of Aesop's Pawnshop. Why play this when you can have Aesop's? But this card's actually performed really, really well. The idea is if your deck has all the Aesop's Pawnshops in the bottom half of the deck, you're going to be drawing a mitt full of really awkward cards that inherently do nothing. So it's nice to have a bit of that spec work to make sure that these cards are giving you some value, let alone drawing you so you eventually find that Pawnshop you need. On top of that, you do have to play with Kabonesa Wu. You can always pull a Harbinger from your deck for free for a click and then just spec work it. It's 2 clicks to draw 2 cards and gain 3 credits. It's not the worst. And if you're struggling to set up, you need to find a couple of your pieces that'll get you there. And again, it's just a nice little gas that gives you some value. And especially when you have all these things that you want to sell, why not have a couple more ways to sell them profitably? And that's this list. And the write-up I really appreciate because it goes through the certain matchups and the certain tech cards you need for certain matchups as well. And they highlight also some of the tech cards that you expect that could be in this deck that you could change to add to this deck and are actually in some ways interesting that they're missing. I think a big card that you might want to consider right now is Pinhole Threading. You're not seeing this a lot. You didn't see this a lot in Continentals, and you are seeing that more corporations are playing cards like Managarm Skunkworks, Anoetic Void, even to some extent Drago Ivanov, but you're dealing with that pretty well with your no free lunches. But that's a card that allows you to deal with some of these upgrades in a much easier way. And it's a card that's not on the list, but you could consider adding it if you're really concerned about some of these matchups. And I think the final thing that's not in this deck, which I found very surprising, is Clot. Clot is like the quintessential Shaper Control toolbox card. It's a card that if you produce at instant speed with something like self-modifying code or simulchip, you can stop fast events dead in the tracks. And you're expecting to see a fair bit of fast events at Worlds. I think it's mostly the Sportsmetal decks that you're going to see a fair bit. They're very competitive, and they're doing pretty well into a meta that might not be as fast as they can be. But in the write-up, it said that with access to a very aggressive Stargate, you might not need that Clot. If you can be aggressive, you can get those accesses in, get disruption with the Stargate, that might be just enough. And it's also important to know that your opponent doesn't know you're not on Clot. So as long as you can keep 4 credits and keep a self-modifying code on the table, they kind of have to respect and play around as if you have Clot, unless they want to make the call and see if you will produce it. And that actually comes up in the games forward, where our opponent thinks we have Clot and we have to always pretend that we have it. Sometimes it gets a bit ugly. But I think that's really interesting, especially the fact that this deck was posted before Worlds and people know that this deck doesn't have Clot. So when they're sitting again across the Kabonesa Wu or maybe even a Lat deck at Worlds, do they think, is there really a Clot in there? Maybe they're playing this version that doesn't have it. Maybe that's why they added it and now I think they don't have it. I'm actually really interested to see what that sort of thing does going into Worlds. But that's this deck. And this deck was really fun to play. It's obviously very, very powerful and it's pretty well tuned into a meta. A meta specifically, we're expecting a lot of tags, and I think that could be the meta right now. And I think it's really interesting that NWE published this. They kind of called their shot and said this is what we would play. So if somebody picks this up and plays it and does really well at Worlds, it's kind of their success too, to some extent. Not that these deck archetypes weren't kind of well known, but I think that's phenomenal. And I do think if you want to play this deck, it's a really good starting point. I do think that this deck is a bit trickier to play than some of the other Anarchs or Criminals that might be a bit more straightforward. And that is because with the ability of Kabonesa, like on turn 1, you can have 14 options of what you want to choose to install. With cards like self-modifying code, it's the same idea. With simulchip, it's the same idea. And you'll see in my matchups, I'm not particularly a good Shaper player. In fact, sometimes I'm embarrassed to play Shaper publicly because a lot of times I don't see the best lines. You even see throughout my play, I do call my mistakes, but you do see that I do play better throughout the games and I see more of the lines and you see some of the like really interesting ways to squeeze more value out of Reaver. And let me tell you, it's a lot of fun. I want to play more of this. If you see lines in the games that I missed, let us know respectfully in the comments because I want to know more how to play this better, because I do think piloting this deck, your first couple games are maybe going to be a bit rough, but once you get there, the amount of creative expression you have to play your way is so high. And the way that you can react to your opponent and react to the board state and understand where you want to use your resources, how you want to set up for the future, whether you think this is going to pay off in time, whether you're going to pawn something early. It's really fascinating. I'd actually love to see more of this at top tables because it's much more interesting than Rizeki and Patap, and that's for sure. And on that note, we got a couple games ahead. Had a lot of fun recording these. Now, of course, World is just in a couple days. We'll be there. Come say hi if you're around. If not, enjoy the show. Will be streamed on twitch.tv/nullsignal Netrunner, link in the description. And eventually the VODs will end up on YouTube if you're watching this much later. Otherwise, enjoy the games. All right. We are playing the standard format, and we are playing the NWE's Reavershop deck, a quote-unquote good stuff deck, and it does look quite good. Mind you, the 2209 standard ban list changed. It inherently greatly impacted the economy engines of some of the best Shaper decks in the format. So now we are changing to an Aesop's Pawnshop type deck. The idea with this list is we run Reaver, a program that gives us card draw when we trash things, and then we're going to trash a lot of our stuff with Aesop's Pawnshop, let alone the value of things like no free lunch. Our opening hand's actually really good. We have access to the Pawnshop. We have a spec work, so we can on tempo pull a Harbinger from our deck. Mind you, Kabonesa can produce programs from her deck and install them for a click, and that's really good. While the cards will be removed from game if they stay there installed at the end of the turn, a lot of times we can just spec work some of our cheap stuff. And we have the pre-shot, which is not going to help with the upgrades, but helps with the assets. I'm going to keep this. This is not a bad hand. It's actually pretty good. We just don't have an endurance yet, and mind you, endurance is going to be really important. We're playing against PD. We're assuming this to be a good list that's running a lot of the 3 subroutine ice. Things like Fairchild 3 are really big in the standard format. So if we're ever going to face check into ice, we're going to try and do it earlier in the turn so that we have clicks to click through Biroids. Oh, best of luck, have fun. All right, so there, not so much ice, a lot of stuff on the table here. So we can easily drop the Prisha and then start checking server 1 and server 2. We want to plan our turn. So that would be Prisha, run, and then last turn we can probably Creative Commission. I think that's probably okay. We don't really need to set up with the rest of our economy engine just this turn. But we want to keep their stuff down. So this is a Nico or Maryland usually. If it is like a Tranquility, we can't use the Prisha credits. Prisha, mind you, is specifically only for assets. Yeah, I still think we'll trash that because we can recover. And we can likely trash what's in server 2. We're hoping for a Maryland or a Nico that we trash for 2 credits. It's an off-rolled. Okay, wasn't expecting that. And then we'll creative commission. So Prisha didn't do anything, but we'll take points off the table for sure. A lot of the Shaper decks might be a bit slower to set up, where you do need to install a lot of stuff to inherently get your economy engine going. I wasn't expecting an agenda just on the table, and that means they likely have a seamless launch in hand. Maybe they have no ice. But again, we're pretty favored into the late game. We don't have to be super aggressive. We don't actually have any multi-axis in the deck, if I'm not mistaken, barring a Stargate. So we do want to play a bit more control. And here we can probably let them get this off. It might be an agenda. If we run first click, if it's a gatekeeper, it's not amazing. If it's a drafter, it's pretty bad because it'll recur the Tranquility. So here I think we can take some time to set up a bit. So we're going to use our Kabonesa ability to install a program from our deck. We're going to get the Harbinger, a program that inherently does nothing, but when it's trashed, it kind of comes back. The idea is that we can go spec work that to draw. We could have actually considered getting a Reaver, huh? Yeah, maybe that was right to pull a Reaver at the same time. That's a big part of our engine. So now we want to get the Aesop's Pawnshop down, and I think we can just use Kabonesa Wu's ability to get the Reaver down. It's worth noting I'm not the best Shaper player, so a lot of the efficiency angles might take me a while to spin up, but don't worry, we'll get there together. So install the Aesop's Pawnshop because we have something to pawn next turn. Oh, the chat's not scrolling, excuse me. And then we'll use Kabonesa's ability to pull a self-modifying code. And then we'll use a self-modifying code at instant speed to install the Reaver, which is a huge part of the economy of this deck. Because this is the first time a turn you trash an installed card, and it can be the corporation's cards for sure, but it also can be runner cards. And that's where we want to trash one thing a turn with Aesop's Pawnshop. Let alone these sort of decks and archetypes got a lot stronger with cards like No Free Lunch and also Stone Chip Chart Room. We're only playing the former, which we can pop on the corporation's turn, which hits the once per turn clause so that we can get that card draw, let alone the 3 credits or remove a tag. Well, I think in a lot of matchups, 3 credits and a card draw is amazing at instant speed. Mind you, you do pay 1 click to install this, of course. Now let's see if they score out here. This list doesn't have any pinhole threading, so some of the scarier upgrades, things like the Mana Garm, we're going to have to deal with those like the old-fashioned way, the classic way, and also Anoetic Void are going to be a problem. And I know in the write-up, Pinsel wrote that you can get things in like double advance. Triple advance? Not the Tranquility, right? Oh, sorry, not the Tranquility, not the Luminal. They got it. That's the best 3-2 in the list, one of, and that's the one 3-2 we're scared of. And they're going to use Precision Design to return a Tranquility home grid, so that's probably going to go into server 3. We're going to have to trash that the old-fashioned way. They're resing it. That actually, they're going to find out very quickly that you don't really want to res this the turn it's installed because it eats the trigger, because this triggers the first time you install a card in the server, and the Tranquility eats its own trigger, unfortunately. Yeah, again, our opponent has gotten recently is getting back into the game, so stuff like this is really easy to do, and you learn it once. All right, so the Tranquility is in the remote server. They had something in their hand to put on top of it. It looks like they might keep that for next turn. And even if we run HQ to use our Parisha credits to trash something, we'll get a card draw. Well, we won't this turn because we're going to go ahead and Pawnshop this to get 3 cards to draw a card. All right, and now this is where we definitely want to get down our endurance and start running. It's a bit awkward here. Like, we definitely want to run HQ if we can get an Axis. Going down to 0 credits is a bit bad. We don't have rigging up, so we're going to have to pay 8 credits out of pocket here. But it might be right to install the No Free Lunch just to crack it because it's better than clicking for credit. I don't know. I do think we need to get our endurance down. I'm going to do credit. That's actually kind of bad too. Because this is 1 credit for 3. Yeah, I'm going to undo that. I feel like trying to grind as much value as I can out of these cards is not as important as just using them when they're good. So we're just going to do this just to gain 3 credits as a click for 3 credits so we can get our boat down. And we can get 1 run in. And again, you want to run once a turn largely with endurance, just to make sure that you're getting its pseudo charge. Vitruvius there off the top, rewarded. We are technically not on game point, while this list has a single mad dash. So we have find a 2-pointer or a 3-pointer, assuming they're on Global Food Initiative, which is a very common agenda in the standard format. It's a 5-3 neutral agenda worth 1 influence. That's only 2 points in our score area. So if we can't play our event, Mad Dash, which is a 1 of in the list, that says we make a run. If we steal that agenda on that run, we get an additional point. So we're hoping to score only 3 agendas, but it's a 1 of in 34. Unfortunately, here we don't have a Pawnshop trigger. There's a Tranquility, and now we can pretty easily check server 3. We're going to have to pay 3 credits if it's a Fairchild 3 and use 2 of our boat counters, but I don't know how good that run is because I don't think we can really trash a Tranquility. All right. So no economy here. We don't want to really sell the ship, do we? So no Aesop's Pawnshop. We actually could consider trashing the Parisha. Like, this deck is running more upgrades than it is assets generally, so I do think there's a chance that pawning the Parisha for the card draw is right. I'm just going to do that to make sure that our deck is flowing pretty well. That could be wrong. And here we have the Simul chip, which is really interesting because we just trashed a program. So if we install this, we can reinstall a Harbinger, and that's so much more money for the deck. So actually, that turned out to be pretty good, I think. Let's run. We can consider running server 3 here. Yeah, we can consider running server 3 just to force a res. And this won't stop the run. This is not a defensive upgrade, so we just want to run once a turn to get the endurance counter. There's the Fairchild 3. So this has 3 subroutines, which is really annoying for us. Now, they only have 2 credits, so they can't do too much next turn. So we're going to break 2 of these subroutines. It's either pay 3 credits or trash one of our installed cards. We'll just pay 3 credits. It's some money. But this is one of the biggest ice you have to respect when playing against HB in the standard format. This thing is everywhere. It was only recently unbanned earlier this summer, and it's just very good. So Rashida Yahim, we'll trash that out of pocket, unfortunately. Tranquility, we're not going to trash that. We got our bow counter. So here we can do credit, simul-chip, and then no free lunch, and that allows us to get an immense amount of value because we can crack this on our turn because we trash a program to install the Harbinger to make sure that we have fuel for Aesop's Pawnshop, and then no free lunch we can use on their turn, considering we don't care about the tag clause on this thing. And that's going to give us another card draw. And you see exactly what the engine of this deck is, and it's so much more interesting, and it needs a bit better player, I think, piloting. You have to have a bit more forethought here than just some of the old stuff, like Rozeki, Pat Tap, Tapworm, where you just install and kind of forget about them. Tranquility getting the 2 credits. Second ice on their remote server. Again, with 3 credits, they could still score out an agenda. And if they seamless launch out at Offworld Office, we're in not a great spot. But on their turn, we're going to crack this for 3 credits and a card. And then at the beginning of our turn, we're going to Pawnshop this for 3 credits and a card. Admittedly, there's a chance that sometimes you want to leave these on the table because of your spec works, but we didn't have any spec works at hand. So 6 credits, we have a diesel in hand. If we find a Stargate into Mad Dash, we can win. We definitely want to hit a central server once a turn or make a successful run. And I feel like we might be able to transition to, we could even use Kabonesa Wu to pay like, what, 6 credits to get down a Stargate and try and close the game from there. Might as well diesel to see if we can hit it. We don't. We have Beth in hand, a very powerful connection in the standard format, but their credits don't really line up for this to be very good. We have a Pawnshop trigger next turn. I think we could consider doing misdirection into spec work and maybe save it till next turn. No, next turn we will trash. This doesn't care if it's a program. So we can do that and then we can get that down. So we're going to run HQ and then we'll probably install 2 things. But we just need to get our Stargate down. And there's a seamless launch. So it's likely they're going to score into server 3 this turn. Maybe it's another Rashida Yahim, which we didn't mention, but this is like the preeminent best card in the standard format to put into a remote server. That's not an agenda. Okay, so we can get the misdirection down. That will set up the spec work next turn and we'll just get the daily cast ticking. There's a small chance that they score the Offworld Office that it is actually worth getting down to Beth here, but there's a chance it's just a Vitruvius. It looks like their list is running multiple Vitruvius. Sometimes they play Architect Deployment Test in these sort of lists. I'm hoping it's that because they won't have any money. Admittedly, they will have ice. But our econ engine is chugging along. I think we just need to transition into, okay, server 3 is a defensive upgrade, it looks like. Either Anoetic, which it can't really afford as well, or particularly Managarm, which is a bit more likely. We also need to see what their influence is on. We haven't seen. Border Control is something we could expect with 7 credits. So on their turn, we're just going to head, or sorry, on our turn, and we're going to Pawnshop away this face down card, which is, again, the value of the Harbinger. And now we have 8 credits. Okay, so we can start with spec work on the misdirection. Again, we're not going to need this. Sometimes it's actually worth to keep a card installed so you can face check easily through a Fairchild and it saves you 3 credits. I do think we're going to get our value worth through this regardless. We just need to hit, I think here we can just go for the Stargate. So what we're going to do is we're going to Kabonesa Wu for a self-modifying code. We're going to overclock into HQ to get the Stargate down. Then we can Stargate once, but if they score an agenda, they can like rebound the thing that we steal. So that's a bit obnoxious. I still think we need to transition to Stargate pretty heavily here. We have an access to our Fractor in hand, which one of our 2 Fractors, mind you. But I do think we just need to put the Stargate pressure on, and that might be able to lock the top of the deck. So even if they score out, they can't do much. So I'm going to do Kabonesa for a self-modifying code. And I'm just going to overclock HQ, which while we have no inherent way to use the money, the idea is we're going to use a self-modifying code, and we're going to use these credits to install a Stargate. So it's a fair bit cheaper. Breach server again. Ooh, Vitruvius. Okay, now we're on game point. So unfortunately, we don't have a click to steal an agenda if we see off the top of Stargate. But now again, they're in a pretty ugly spot. If they can res anything here, it's just a magnet. That's perfect for us. Again, while we don't have a breaker, Endurance is a heck of a card. This is the first time I've ever played Endurance, mind you. I actually don't think I've hit a table with Endurance yet. So we're looking for an agenda here, of course. Not that we can steal it from archives. If they score an agenda, they can use Precision Design. And it looks like there is a Global Food Initiative. And of course, if we just ran normally, we would have won there. We're going to go ahead and trash that. Now they can return it to hand if they score an agenda, maybe even have a click left to put in the remote server. Maybe. But at that point, I don't know. Maybe they don't have a lot of money. Seamless to start. So 2 advancements. At least if it goes into HQ, we can just smash HQ a lot, especially because they're playing double seamless. Oh, it looks like they might just get into the remote server. That's really terrifying for us. It's an Opera Lapis. Now they have money, so they have 1 click left. They can return the agenda to hand. Sorry, chat's not scrolling for some reason, the log. So global food's in their hand. So they can just add that into server 3. Now I think we're just gonna have enough gas to deal with that. So it looks like it's in there. It could be on an Anoetic. They drew a card too, so it seems more like an Anoetic. But they can't score that out for a couple turns because we know there's 2 seamlesses in there and you need 2 seamlesses to score out a food. Actually, this is getting a bit dicey. Okay, we need to think. If there's a food in there that's 3 points, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there's only 5 more points, which means there's only 2 agendas left and 26 cards in R&D. So I don't actually think the Stargate's that good. There's a chance that we pawn the daily casts. There's also a chance that we just sell the Stargate. We're going to have 12 credits, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14 credits. And we're going to have 2 counters on the endurance if we need to. Sorry, we're going to have 2 breaks on the endurance if we need to. We can also just run first click and we can click through the Fairchild. That means, unfortunately, we won't be able to deal with an Anoetic. But if they have an Anoetic, we also know the top card of R&D. The Stargate is like, we're going to see 2 new cards. If that's a border control, it's annoying. What's our decoder? It's an Oiler. So we can always pull the Oiler from our deck. It installs for 1 credit. And then it breaks Fairchild for very cheap. I think we just do Oiler, run the remote server. I don't think we have to do anything wild, which means I'm actually going to pawn the, I'm going to pawn the Stargate. Because again, there's only 2 agendas on 26. And if we can't steal this agenda, we will lose eventually. Because for them, that's the winning points. All right, that draws a card too. Okay, 4 clicks here. So I think we just Kabonesa Wu to pull out our Oiler. 14 credits is definitely enough. The question is whether we run HQ once. So running HQ once actually saves us with Oiler. What's the break cost? It's only 3 credits to break a Fairchild 3. That's just about as good as installing a no free lunch. We'll start here. And if that's a border control, we only have to break it once. Yeah, we'll just start here. We'll do an Oiler. So this comes in, and for the turn that's installed, it breaks code gates for 1 for subroutine. So we're breaking a Fairchild 3 for not a lot. And here we can run the remote. If we get border controlled, we can run HQ, and then we can run back. And that should probably do it. Or maybe we have to run this twice. We'll see. But we're probably, our Oiler's going to be removed from game if we don't do anything with it. It's a drafter. Okay. That is annoying. But at least that means we can only have to run this twice, if I'm not mistaken, because they can't do that twice. They can't Anoetic us twice. So of course for this we have the boat. Sailing on through. We hit this. So this is where the value of the Oiler is and the Kabonesa ability to produce breakers at just about, you know, any turn you can need them, let alone the breakers that are so good the turn they're installed. So 3 credits to break a Fairchild 3 is pretty unprecedented. Mind you, it's a limited window on the Oiler. And now we'll see what upgrade it is. If it's a Managram, we're fine. It's an Anoetic, so they can fire that once. So here they can throw out 2 cards. And so the question is just, can we go back? Because they can't fire that again. And we definitely can go back. We just run HQ to get 2 boat counters and we're back in, and that should be game. So here we make our first successful run of the turn. So we get the endurance. Regolith, no reason to trash that. And we're running back in. We need to break the drafter because they, in theory, could install another defensive upgrade if there's something in archives. Actually, maybe it's not that most important, but they also could maybe install spin. No, I don't think any of those cards are in archives. Maybe they are. So we'll boat on through. Mind you, Anoetic, they need 2 cards and 2 credits to end the run, and they're short the cards. 3 credits, breach server. They can't fire the Anoetic. That'll be the food. Good game. Aye, that was close. Good game. And you see the econ engine in this deck, it's like a lot more interesting where you have to actually like plan your turns and like make sure your economy is running in the background while still putting on pressure. And this doesn't have as much like run pressure as some of the other decks you've seen, maybe in Continental Season with Dirty Laundry, Into the Depth. Yeah, whole deck. And while they're definitely flooded there, that actually kind of worked out to their favor. Like they were just a bit behind, but they could have maybe scored out there. If they had more cards in hand, that was the difference. Could we run this 3 times? No. Admittedly, at that point, though, I think we're okay because we didn't actually have to get the food this turn because they can't score it out. But it shows you the econ engine behind this deck. It's actually quite satisfying. We had a good start. Let's get another one in. All right, we're playing standard. Again, this is the Reavershop, the NWE deck that they posted just before Worlds. Mind you, Worlds in a couple days. Our opening hand is pretty good. Our deck is actually well tuned to deal with tags. We have 3 copies of No Free Lunch, which is, you know, a pretty strong anti-tag card, but it's so good with our economy engine. And we have a pretty good opening here. We have the 1 of Beth, which is nice. We have Sure Gamble. We have Harbinger into Spec Work, and that's, you know, kind of it. We just don't have our Aesop's Pawnshop. But into the Reality Plus matchup where, you know, tags are obviously going to be common and very important. Our 3 copies of No Free Lunch, we're probably going to have to use those to dodge tags as much, less so get the 3 credits. So this is definitely a pretty good hand, barring Aesop's Pawnshop would be nice. All right, so the first time a turn we take a tag, so we have to assume they're on copies of, maybe they're on Drago, Ivanov, and that sort of list, which this list is built to beat. to some extent, actually to a pretty good extent, I think. But on top of that, Funhouse is common, F2P is common, IP block in a standard format is just a very, very good piece of ice and gets it a bit better. They mulliganed, mind you, sorry, the chat is not scrolling consistently for some reason, but predicted planogram just to get some money. And again, they said that they were a newer player, so hey, we'll keep that in mind. And card in server 1, no idea what this can be. Sometimes I've seen Rashida's on the table this early, but in cards in server 1, like, I don't know, is that a snare? It's sometimes really hard to get reads on newer players where like plays like this actually can be to their advantage. But let's just start up. We'll get down our Harbinger, mind you, a standard card, one of the few standard cards, only standard cards in this deck. We're just going to spec work it. And this card comes back as a face down card, which is phenomenal. We have an endurance in hand, and while we could just start running and charging, we kind of do want to set up a bit. We could have actually considered pulling our Harbinger there. I'm not sure if that's correct. And then we can do Beth into Sure Gamble, and that will set it up. Again, Beth, usually a one of in a lot of these Shaper decks, just an immense amount of value for 2 credits. Depends on, it makes the runner or the corporation consider how many credits they have. Sometimes you see funny plays where corporations try to duck under. Specifically, the 15 credits is the nicest mark here. Ooh, upgrade on server 1. Makes me think it's a price hack. Maybe even an Amaze Amusements. We don't deal with those too well. We do have a misdirection actually, so we can take on a lot of tags at once. And here, if we were like really, really quite brave, we could just drop down a Stargate and see if we can like close the game off. They're on a 44 card deck, so they're running 18 to 19 agendas, so they might just be on, you know, 3 6-pointers. Or 6 3-pointers, excuse me. That's a lot of money for server 1. We'll see if that pans out. I don't know. We need to get a no free lunch down sooner than later, just so they can't do something awful to our boat if we install it and they return it to hand with the tag punishment you've seen standard. All right, spec work here. We actually could, it might make sense to use Kabonesa Wu's ability to install a program. So we'll install a Harbinger. We'll just spec work that because spec work requires a program. So you can't spec work a face down card. There's a no free lunch. There's our Heart Reaver, which is super important. We want to get these 2 down, and that could be our entire turn. The Reaver's not so important to get down right now. I think the no free lunch we definitely want for some safety. And as soon as we're comfortable, we just put that in endurance and start running. At that point, we're going to have less credits than them. So that's worth keeping that in mind. So I think we can draw once and just get down. Oh, that's exactly what you need here. I'm still going to prioritize the no free lunch just because I'm scared and I don't know what this deck can do. But there's a chance that we end up with a tag here if they score out like a tomorrow's headline. I don't think that will be that good for them. At least it's cheap. I'm going to try and keep scrolling this. Hedge fund, they have some money now. And R&D and HQ are wide open. And while I'm not going for random single accesses, our deck doesn't get that much benefit from like just running. We don't have cards like Dirty Laundry or Jailbreak, right? We're trying to more often set up for a late game that's advantageous for our engine. So that's why I'm playing a bit more cautiously. And once we have our Stargate, that's when we transition. Mind you, once we have our endurance down, we do want to run a bit. And if that's a Bologna, I'm totally fine with them scoring it out. It could be a Drago, but at least the no free lunch deals with that. Okay, so these 2 need to come down next, and then eventually our endurance. So we're going to install the Reaver, install the Aesops, and that should solve us for a while. The question is whether you want to get the endurance down and run as well. Kind of scared of snare. I'll draw once up. Okay, well, now we have a lot of money. Just plain Shaper. We're going to start running soon. Again, once we get their endurance down, we want to run once a turn for sure. And this is our engine, Reaver. The Apex card that says the first time we trash a card, we draw a card. First per turn, just an NGO front. Perfect. That's one of the biggest bluffs, the most common card you see that goes into remote server that looks like an agenda, but it's not. And that means we're probably going to get a 5th clip off of Beth. They're on 17 now. It'd be kind of difficult for them to duck underneath that. If they do install advanced, they'll still be a 15. But Reaver's so important for our list because we can crack things like no free lunch or even Stone Ship Chart Room. The deck doesn't have that on our opponent's turn. They just draw cards. But here, I think we get the endurance down. We just transition to Stargate. They installed in server 1, drawn up now. And we're going to get a lot of value. Aesop's Pawnshop will be a card draw and 3 credits. Click sleep at the start of every turn. 3rd ice there. A lot of times against late game Shaper, you want to go for this like really absurd remote. It can be a struggle to deal with. So we'll trash one of these. Beth gives us a click. Pawnshop. Awesome. 2nd no free lunch. Okay. I think we're going to draw once. Because I want to not die to snare. We'll get down to endurance. And we can start checking central servers. We still have 11 credits, which is a lot. We can run HQ. We want to get a charge on the endurance every time. We'll see a bit of their hand, get a bit of a read on their deck, the first card we've accessed, and it's a boom, which is something we're probably going to trash. So we know they're probably on a Drago list, definitely a hard-hitting news list, so they want to tag us. So keeping our no free lunches around seems quite important. From there, again, we want to transition to Stargate sooner than later. I'm just going to drop once more and get down another no free lunch. So now we can dodge 2 tags at instant speed while also drawing a card, as long as we're doing 1 per turn. So yeah, it's going to be maybe a bit difficult for them. And here we can just Kabonesa Wu out for SMC and then use the self-modifying code to become a Stargate. Planogram, draw 3, so a lot of unknowns in hand. They just drew 4 fresh cards, and maybe the thing in server 1's already an agenda, so running HQ is pretty important. They're also probably running Bologna, which costs us 5 credits to steal. We can deal with that. And the other common agenda you see is Degree Mill, which requires us to shuffle 2 of our cards back into our deck, which face down cards are cards. So we actually could consider keeping around a single Harbinger and getting that back into our list. There's also a reason why we might want to install like a Propeller or something else just to have them on the table. Server 2 looks like a Spin Doctor is my guess. Advance. The upgrade was advanced, right? That was underneath the NGO front. So that looks like a Bio Vault, right? That's my guess. All right. We're only going to get a free card draw. So we're going to do that card draw first, just so we get more information. And we'll Pawnshop. I guess the Harbinger, yeah. Third no free lunch. It's a bit overkill. Tags are going to be hard to land. And do we just here go for SMC into Stargate? We did trash down a face down card, but when it's face down, it doesn't have any types. So the ability to use a Simulchip isn't active now. We'd have to trash something. I think we consider running server 2. Again, we need to get the Spin Doctors down before we can transition to Stargating. We'll see what this is. If it's a Spin Doctor, they draw mid-turn, and then we can just hit HQ. Because again, we want to run, yeah, there you go. We want to run once a turn to get endurance charges. And here they probably shuffle back the Boom. We'll see what else they value. Maybe an NGO front. There you go. You see them highlighting in real time. Yeah, Boom and Hedge Fund. Okay, so they want more money. So now we want to run HQ because again, they drew like 4 or 5 cards last turn. And this turn combined. And we want to get a once per turn run on the endurance. There's a ping. Okay, always good to know. That is something that we can easily deal with a Propeller. I just actually want to get the Propeller down because it will save us a fair bit. What did we do here? I think we just install the SMC in the Propeller. And then we use this to pull a Stargate next turn. Yeah, that's fine. And then we have, you know, things to shuffle back into our deck. Once our Propeller is empty, we can consider keeping it around. We can also just Aesop's on it. But we now only know 1 card in their hand, I think, a ping. We're going to try and transition to Stargate. Mind you, their deck has shockingly few agendas. We need to draw into our Mad Dash so we can win off of 2 agendas. It's a run event that says if you play this and hit an agenda on the turn that you're running with it, you get an additional agenda point, which is so important because they're only running 3 pointers and we need to get to 7 points. So that saves us hitting a 3rd agenda. It's incredibly impactful in this matchup. I'm not sure here how precious we have to be with our no free lunches because we're not selling with Aesops, which means we just don't have economy. And them going for the Doom remote, again, 4 ice on their remote server means we really want to win off central servers. We could top deck into an overclock. We have the Simulchip here, so I'm actually okay selling the Propeller and just bringing it back. No, I think if anything, we will self-modifying code for the Stargate, and then we can Simulchip back a Harbinger, which is enough value for our deck. This also will draw a card because it'll be the first time a turn we trash something. So I'm not going to pawn anything. We could probably pawn the no free lunch, honestly. I don't know how precious we have to be. I'm not going to. Let's see what we draw with Beth first. Let's pawn the boat. Okay. So we'll just do self-modifying code. We'll get Stargate again. That draws a card. Only 6 credits, so it seems like there's a credit differential, but we can always clear the tags at pretty good value. So we're going to go ahead and Stargate here. C3. Mind you, 1 Spin Doctor is out. The Seamless Launch, a Bologna, and the Vasilisa. Seamless Launch, I'm scared if they're on a re-education combo. At least we can clicklessly draw with no free lunch once, so they can still neurospike us. If we leave the Bologna up the top, it's kind of hard for us to interact with, but I don't want them to have a Seamless Launch because this is used for like Drago Boom combos. I don't know if they're on re-education. I think they're on Drago Boom combos, so I think the Seamless Launch is like, I don't want them to draw the Bologna, that's for sure. They can draw the Seamless. That might actually not be correct. And so here, if we get down the Simulchip, we can Simulchip for, because we trashed the program, we're going to Simulchip here for the Harbinger. We're going to get this to draw cards, to spec work it. And now we could run to pick up the Bologna. We go down to 3 credits. That seems less than good. So I'm just gonna put down another no free lunch and we can always pop this at instant speed on their turn to get 3 credits and a card. And now they have to do something with R&D. It's a Vasilisa off the top, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, next, if they draw, it's a Vasilisa. So they can always Vasilisa up R&D, which technically we can break a couple of them for free. But if they're just trying to hit us with like Drago Boom. Oh, it's a Vladisibirsk. Oh, what are they up to? We don't have access to Clot. The deck doesn't, which is kind of, you know, a downside. Is this re-education? Just a Degree Mill. Okay, that's fine. So we just need to draw our Mad Dash. I am going to, well, we'll definitely pawn the Harbinger. We actually could crack a no free lunch here just to get another card draw because I think we need to find our Mad Dash to be able to win. I'm going to do that. Obviously, you know, you don't have to be, having these is obviously very good, but I want to do this to get more card draw. So their turn, we're going to get a credit from Beth. Aesop's Pawnshop will pawn the face down. Okay, so 15 credits, mind you. I think we're down to 4 at some point in the last turn, maybe 6. So we Stargate, we know the top of the deck. We need to make sure the agendas are not sneaking through HQ. They're going to score out 3 agendas largely. If they can't like get a backroom machinations with these on the table, it's going to be a bit hard. We can draw once for Mad Dash. Oh, that's good to get down. We'll Stargate. I think we have 2 more simul chips, which we can even consider refreshing the Stargate. All right, Vasilisa, hard-hitting new Seamless launch. They have 1 Seamless in hand. Seamless lets them fast advance out 3 2s with Vladisibursk. I'm gonna get rid of the Vasilisa because it's an ice that we don't want to deal with. Endurance at 7. I think here we can just run HQ and install the self-modifying code, which we can crack on their turn to install another Harbinger to get our economy engine going. So we'll hit HQ first. Again, we want to trash on sight if we see like a Spin Doctor. Hard news, that's not going to matter. And we'll get this down. We're going to discard something. We'll discard the 3rd Aesops. Again, we're not scared of tagging, and this deck has such a like strong resource-based economy package that you see where like keeping the resources safe with no free lunches is super impactful. Mind you, this is not a dead card in the off match, which is fantastic. Their ability hasn't fired once, and again, we're not running the remote server, but if we can lock the top of the deck consistently, we know that he just drew a Seamless into hard-hitting news now. So unknown card. We know Seamless, hard-hitting news, Ping, and Ping might be the 4th ice on the remote server. I forget when this happened. Again, they do need some amount of money to res the remote server. The fact that they're pre-installing means that like they don't have to play around Clot, and we're not running Clot in the deck. And then they're dancing Vladisibursk. Okay. So on their turn, I'm going to use the self-modifying code, pay 2 credits. To install, we draw a card. To install the Harbinger, I think. Risha's like, okay. No, we'll do the Harbinger. Then on our turn, we get a credit from Beth. We'll Pawnshop this, which draws another card. And there's an overclock. Again, we're looking for the 1 in Mad Dash and 17. We can also just see 2 agendas. Again, they didn't draw, so we're only seeing 2 new cards, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, 2 new cards. Just don't know what we lose to in the remote server when we're Stargating all the time. I don't know if they have enough agendas in hand to win. Seamless launch, boom, Bologna. Okay, so we're going to trash the Bologna. Again, and if we just top deck our, what's it called? We're just going to mass draw, because if we top deck our 1 in 17 chance of a Mad Dash, we win off the spot. Not scared of the boom. We'll draw once. Again, it's just, okay. And here, I don't think we have to do much. We'll just do that. We can discard some cards. Another boat, doesn't matter. And we're just 1 Mad Dash or 1 good Stargate away. So what did they draw here? Seamless. Which again, they can just Seamless the Vlad. Go from there. Oh, it looks like they're going to. So Seamless. Is there any way we lose? How do we lose this? I don't know what they can put in the remote that's like scary enough. Don't seem to be on Neurospike Re-Education. Double Seamless. All right. So they can score out, but can they get the last point? That's a big question. And so there's only 2 more agendas and 22 cards. Like that's the biggest issue here, is that they don't have a lot of agendas left. All right, I'm just going to pawn the propeller. I'm not sure that we're going to need it. We saw the pings, but we just need, oh no, we don't have to pawn it. We have a card draw. I just wanted to get a card draw turn. We could also consider drawing with a no free lunch, which is probably right. Beth gets a credit. We'll do the daily casts. Pawn this, draw a card. Again, it's all about that Mad Dash. We win. Okay, Mad Dash. Never Mad Dash. Diesel for Mad Dash? Never Mad Dash. 1 in 9. Okay. Well, we're just going to Stargate. We're going to discard a bunch of these cards. That's okay. Boom, hedge fund, ping. Okay, well, we could lose in the remote server as soon as next turn. It might actually be right just to run the remote server. I might be tunneling a bit too much here. Spin Doctor also like messes up everything. So can we just pay 10 credits here? But then with the Mad Dash doesn't land. It's 1 in 9, and we're going to draw 2 cards next turn. That's ugly. I'm going to install the Misdirection just so we can consider running the remote next turn, because we probably need to if we don't find our Mad Dash, and we can discard some stuff here. Tacobi, we don't need. Ping on the remote server, we have to play around. Luckily, we have 2 Neo free lunch. We don't need this. We're going to win before the daily cast ticks out. Simul chip is actually a lot of value. Oiler, I don't know, with 10 credits on the endurance or 10 counters, I don't think we're going to need another breaker. We probably don't need the creative. Okay. They just drew into, what is it? Okay, they just drew once more. So now it's 3 unknowns there. They drew 1 unknown card. They put something into server 1. We actually have to consider running it. So they really ought to. But they just played hedge fund. That helps them ice up the remote server. But again, they have a couple unknowns in there. I'm just going to try and draw into Mad Dash as hard as possible, because again, there's 6 points in there. And while we're not stealing them, it's because we have a 1 in 9 on the Mad Dash. So on their turn, no free lunch, just to draw a card. Then on our turn, we're going to go use our Beth to get not a card. We're going to do Beth for credit, daily cast for credit. It's either we pawn the propeller or we pawn the daily cast. I'm just going to pawn the daily cast. We don't. It's in the bottom 7. Draw once. Draw once. Stargate. Where's the Mad Dash? Drago, predicted planogram, Spin Doctor. We'll trash the Spin Doctor. Okay, we didn't find it. Beans. We can just install this simul chip. That gives us a lot of value. We don't need the Pericia. Propeller will probably go long enough before the game's over, and the daily castle probably won't matter before the game's over. It's in the bottom 5. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. 2 Spin Doctors are out. They just drew into A Drago, which is kind of useless. Only one no free lunch though. They can maybe do something with that. In theory, they can install Drago like Seamless of the Disperse and like give us a tag, but again, that's where the no free lunch matters. We're tech to the gills. 3 no free lunch is just about enough, let alone, of course, we have Misdirection, a standard card that allows you to deal with mass tags. We have to run this remote server. We kind of have to. Vlad advance. They could win with a 15 minutes here, right? We could actually just straight lose. Maybe pausing for action. If they have the 15 minutes, they win. Oh no, just an upgrade on R&D. No idea what the upgrade on R&D could be. Could be a Chrysium. If that, we just have to run first. But now we're actually forked. I think here we will simul-chip to trash a propeller to draw a card. We'll reinstall something. We'll just reinstall. I don't know what we actually could need on this turn. Again, the Mad Dash is 1 and 4. We're going to draw 2 cards here. So if we install the Harbinger, we can pawn it. Draws another card. That's good. We also can just get the Cleaver down for the remote server if we have to deal with it. We're assuming there's pings and IP blocks. There's no way we don't draw into the Mad Dash, right? So here we don't get a card. Off Beth, we get credit. Aesop's pawn this, draw a card. Bottom 3. Oh no, at least we can do draw, Mad Dash. Second last card. Let's go. That's the Mad Dash. Second last card. We needed that a year ago. Just take all the points. Hey, good game. I was looking for that thing. Again, we probably could have ran the remote server. Like, I was just hoping that we draw into the Mad Dash sooner. Some lists are running 2 Mad Dash because it's super important to get that early in some matchups. But you see the difference that just like playing these like super easy play tech cards does against this sort of thing. So I'm wondering if NWE posting this list into the standard format is going to scare and push people out of playing Tag Me archetypes. Your opponent's only been playing for a couple days, and you know, so they might not know all the cards to play around. Obviously, they got the server 1 up. They were going to score out from that. I don't know what their last point is, but it's definitely a bit tough because we're forking both ways. Can't stop thinking about it. Heck yeah, I remember those days. That's really awesome. But yeah, our opponent might have had the winning agenda. Again, this deck list is likely running only 6 3-pointer agendas and then maybe the backroom machination. So our opponent had to find another agenda there to score out. All right, playing standard. We're against Sportsmetal, and this is a matchup that the deck is supposedly, you know, tuned into if you're playing competitive, and this is meant to be a potential world's winning deck list. Firstly, this list isn't running Clot. So we have no way to stop the fast advance, and a lot of times Sportsmetal is just going to windmill out agendas with all the fast advance they have access to. However, we do have access to a Stargate, which is also very important for this list. If we can trash some of their agendas, let alone their fast advance pieces, that can do us well. So the idea is how fast can we get our money up to put down the Stargate and put enough pressure. Our hand has money. Mind you, the propeller is not often going to be that useful. And we're expecting mostly Hagens in the list. I don't know if they're going to end up playing, what is it, Echo? And we have the Takobi, which I don't think we're ever going to install. So this hand is basically the Sure Gambles and the Diesel, which obviously is not bad. The question is how quickly we can set up. This is fine. I think we could just do like double Sure Gamble and then we can just get down to Stargate and try and Stargate once a turn. I don't know if this is worth keeping. We don't have our like long-term economy engine of Aesops and then like Harbingers and no free lunches. So Sportsmetal, if you're not familiar, a super competitive identity that's been around for a couple of years now, and this thing has won worlds before. The idea with this deck is that it gets 2 credits or 2 cards whenever an agenda is scored or stolen. So it often plays a lot of the smaller agendas and agendas that do something good enough on steal or on score. And the idea is that it's hard to stop your opponent from getting an immense amount of value. They also run these strange agendas that you might know in the startup format, like Mega Pre-Qualifier, that's worth, you know, less points for them or for us than them. So it makes it inherently a bit difficult. All right, 2 cards in remote servers. Double advance. How did that happen? El Vagao. No ability to use, just to de-res a card. All right. Oh, they click sleep with the red level installed something. Yeah. Sportsmetal got 2 cards. All right. So they're already off to the races with something on the table. What do we have to respect? We have to respect that that's a Bast Chiraboga. It could also just be a Marilyn or Nico. Here we could like Diesel for Aprecia. It's not great, but we definitely want to get our options before we come down here. So here I think we could do like Sure Gamble, install Boat, run. At that point we'll be only on the single credit, which is bad for us. So I'm going to just do that. We probably just have to check this. So we're going to hold off Boat for 1 turn. There's a chance this is also just like an annoying agenda that they don't mind. Tranquility Home Grid. Yeah, we'll trash that. Again, our deck is Aprecia to trash installed cards, but unfortunately, Aprecia only is assets. I'm also like not amazing at this sort of deck archetype. I don't know whether we should just be a bit more defensive, whether we should value getting our Reaver down as soon as possible before, you know, potentially trashing opponent's cards, because Reaver draws a card first time a turn you trash an installed card, whether it's yours or your opponent's. So I'm not exactly sure what we should be prioritizing or what the game plan is here. Because Sportsmetal, you need to have a strong game plan because these games are often like, you know, 6 to like 10 turns. So you can't spend 2-3 turns figuring it out. You just don't have enough time. Here we can always do sure gamble into our endurance and start checking stuff, let alone server 3. I think that'd be pretty okay. Again, we're not going to need a lot of money in this matchup. It's mostly to pay for Stargate, and maybe we'll have to break 1 or 2 pieces of ice. But a lot of times they're not running a lot of ice. And there you go, ice up R&D. So we're just going to smash in. Run HQ. Got a counter on endurance, see what their hand is. Probably an Audacity, a fast advance piece. Biotic Labor is what I'm expecting. Hyperloop extension though, and this is where it's hard to interact with them. Because they just got 3 credits, and let alone now they can get 2 more card draw. At least the card draw here is a bit awkward because they don't want to draw while we can run HQ. We'll check server 3. No cards in hand just means that if they're on Moonpool or on Audacity, it's a bit harder. That's a white space, cheap enough. This card's not bad. We're going to go break that again, sailing on through. And with 5 credits, we can trash just about anything. I think Maryland would be the nightmare here. It's a Rashida. Oh, not Maryland. Sorry, I was meant to say Rashida's the nightmare here because that would like refill their hand. So we're glad to get that down. All right, now anything they can do, they can put in the remote server. We can always get through this for only 3 credits as long as we have 10 credits, right? But our economy has entirely stalled out. And we want to run once a turn as well to make sure that we're charging the endurance. We don't have dirty laundry or any good way to get value off the run. So we're just going to be poking for singles, which is sometimes good enough. The ice on R&D is also going to be pretty good. It means we can't just slam down Stargate without having to worry. Hedge fund. Okay, they have more money than, I thought they would. Aesop's is good. We don't have a target. We want to draw spec work soon enough. Cleaver is good. We can draw once more, probably discard the Takobi. Yeah, we'll just run HQ. A lot of breakers. Oiled does break the white space for 1 turn for 0. Bifurcation. Okay, again, it's points for us, but the bad thing here is we probably shouldn't have ran last click. We probably should have ran earlier in the turn because that allows them to draw up without being worried about drawing agendas. So running last click there, I think was actually like very wrong because it's not like we were going to draw into dirty laundry or anything else that would sweeten the access. And we definitely wanted to run. So yeah, I think that's something that's worth looking at for sure. Don't run last click into Sportsmetal. Well, you should if you need accesses, but like that turn, I don't think is worth doing when we could have ran sooner. All right, the question is how do they score out against the boat? With 11 credits, they have access to a lot of fast advance options. Biotic Labor, there's one of them. This costs 7 credits to score out an agenda. They'll get 2 credits probably back. Let's see what this is. If it's like the Luminal, that's the worst case scenario for us. Just Vitruvius, that's fine. And now they have 2 cards in hand. Let's see if they get the money back or the card draw again. Card drawing here means they could have actually drawn into 2 more agendas. So again, our economy is really bad. Draw once. That's good for last click. So we'll hit HQ again. Don't do last click. Giordano. This is going to be a nightmare eventually. We can pretty easily trash this and then still creative commission. Do we want to go back for a single? I think we need to get all the accesses we can afford to. I don't know what else we're doing here because we can't install any of the cards without, like, we have to play creative, right? So we'll go back for one more. Hyperloop. Okay, again, it's agenda points, but it's way more value for them. And this is where, this deck is hard to interact with. A lot of times just trashing agendas is good. Good rips. I don't know. I kind of don't like those. They just drew 2 more cards. I'm going to get the creative commission down. We can't do too much else if we don't have money. And this is where, like, I think our mulligan was bad. If we had something like a daily cast, a Pawnshop, a spec work, we actually could get value in the background while still trying to get pressure on. And right now we're trying to like make us a drawing and still putting enough pressure on the board. So we played, I think, run creative, all our gambles. So burst economy in the deck, it's just the creative commission. So we need to get our Aesops down and we need to get the Aesop's targets. And while we can use our Kabonesa Wu to pull a program from our deck, it won't stay there at the end of the turn. So I don't know if it's right to like Kabonesa Wu for a self-modifying code and then pay 2 credits to install a misdirection, or not misdirection, but like a Harbinger. It seems a bit bad. But if we top deck a spec work, then we'll use Kabonesa to pull Harbinger at instant speed. Or not instant speed, at a click. Excuse me. It's definitely a click. It's free though. That's also like a downside to this deck is that the NWE published this deck and they're very public about it. This deck doesn't have Clot anymore. And Clot's one of the most important things in this matchup if you can put it in your deck. Because you stop all the like Audacity fast advance plays, the Biotic Labor fast advance plays. And even if we install like a self-modifying code, that might do enough where they get a bit worried about it. But I love the top deck of spec work. Even just like a Beth would be good enough economy in the background. Maybe some card draw even. All right, so it looks like a Giordano, if not a Tranquility. So server 3 is, a bit dodgy. Server 5 could be anything. I think Rashida in server 3 is likely, or just like a Mega Priest, something they want to feed us. But I don't know what to do here. Oh, these are really ugly. I think there's a chance that we just like end up pawning a Simul chip. No, that can't be right. Okay, maybe we have to do some kickflips here, right? Like we install a Simul chip, then we Kabonesa Wu for a Harbinger, and then we use the Simul chip to trash the Harbinger. That's 3 clicks though. So we shouldn't have drawn if that's the case. Because we can't get a central run. We need to check server 5. We can't let a Rashida hit the table. If anything though, it'd be a Maryland, that's fine. We can't afford to deal with that. Yeah, that's ugly. We should have planned our turn a bit better. Because I do think we might need to do Kabonesa for and then simul chip it out. Ugly. So this is going to be a bit of a downturn. And we can always pawn the simul chip. It's basically we spent, 2 clicks for 1 credit. Not great, but obviously we need to install this card for the future. But when this is going to go fast, Maryland's rezzed. Yeah, we can't really afford to trash that. If we had Parisha, it'd be a bit different. So server 3 is looking tight, and we could have checked it. It's just the Giordano gets rezzed, and then we have to pay, 6 credits on top of the 3 to trash. We can't really afford that. And this card's been a nice inclusion to some of these Sportsmetal decks. Obviously, like a potent card since it came out, but like not a lot of people love to play it. And now with additional really good 1-pointers, it's seeing a bit more play because this actually like forces economy to be relevant in this matchup where economy classically wasn't that important. At least on the runner side, right? Damn, looks like it was an agenda. Advance. Let's see what it is. Luminal's the worst case. Mega Pre would also be bad. Just another Vitruvius there on game point. We can lose as soon as next turn. Pretty easily. They just drew 2 here. So now if they draw into an Audacity and another 3-2, which there's one more Vitruvius, one more Luminal, yeah, we're out of the game. That's bad. Do we want to Pawnshop a simul chip? I think we need that. This is not good. If we trash this, they'll have 6 credits. They still need 7 for Biotic. They've played 1 Biotic, so it's not that impactful. They could red level clearance for clickless money, but that's a pretty niche hand. Draw once, don't know where we're drawing into, but there you go. So that is something that we can Aesops. If we pull a Reaver from our deck, it is 4 credits. There's also probably some sick trick here where like we pull the Reaver for 1 credit, we simul chip it back for free, and then we have the Harbinger. Like it's good. I just feel like it's a bit too little too late. I think our opening hand wasn't good. So that's 1, 2. So we can run HQ here. Issues if we steal an agenda, they get 7 credits, or they'll be on 8 credits with the Maryland. Like we can lose next turn to a Biotic Hyperloop. There you go. That's exactly the worst case scenario where now they have enough money to score a fast advance in any way they have access to. Oh, this is not good. Not good. Do we just pretend to threaten we have Clot? Because I don't know if they know that this deck list doesn't have Clot. Classically, these sort of shaper deck lists were playing Clot. They just drew 2. Okay, the chance of them now having a 3-2 agenda is a bit higher. Luckily, we didn't steal Mega Pre. So can they find the last Vitruvius and the Biotic or the Audacity or the Luminal? All right, this is not great. So install the Reaver. Then we'll use the simul chip. We have to trash a program. It draws a card. And then we'll reinstall the Reaver just because if we haven't trashed a card a turn, we have to trash a card. So that's a cool way that you can use Kabonesa Wu's downside to well, you can mitigate it. Sometimes it can be just an advantage, I guess. They could have it here. Again, we're not threatening Clot in any way. Not that our deck has, but the only way we could threaten Clot is to get a self-modifying code on the table. And we only have 2 in the list. And if we pull it with Kabonesa, it gets removed at the end of the game. So maybe they're actually the right play could have been install self-modifying code with Kabonesa and then simul chip the self-modifying code back onto the table, just so that we'd have a permanent self-modifying code. That actually might be okay and build us some breathing room. I just don't know whether Weiramo knows about whether we're on Clot or not. Server 3 also could be, in theory, and maybe the money will be tighter, but it could just be a virus, which allows them to play around Clot. But here we finally got our engine up, we still need to steal a lot of points. If we find a Vitruvius, we could Mad Dash to win. Mad Dash is a 1 in 29. We've had some issues making that thing show up when we need to, but that's it. Biotic. Yeah, good game. Yeah, maybe with the SMC line was correct because we can't deal with that. I do think our opening hand was pretty bad. Anagram. Wait, what is this? To draw 3 cards? Okay, that's cool because they just need card draw here. So maybe this isn't it. Maybe they're just doing this because they have an Audacity. Because otherwise with 5 credits, they can't fast advance out. If they have a moon pool, also it's potential. But you don't see that a lot. Planogram Biotic, just to clicklessly draw 3 cards. Yeah, I think the biggest issue here is that there's not that many 3-2s left in the list, which they want to fast advance out. Because Mega Pre-Qualifier is a 3-1 agenda that's worth 3-2 if we get 1 in our score area, or if they, I think, score 1 as well. So that's not alive here. But we still need 2 sick rips to win. And we need a fair bit of money if we're running server 3 into Giordano. We need 8 credits, which will just about get there. Probably on either we see 2 moon pools, 1 Audacity, just 3 Audacities is like tried and true. Red level clearance that can be clickless more card draw, which even further chance to get into their Audacity plus real 3-2 agenda. But I think there's only 2 more real 3-2s and 22 cards left. So we'll see what they do with this. This is going to be flexible too. I don't think they have the money for Bash Chiraboga to score out on top of it. Uh-oh, non-agenda. Okay, just icing up HQ because they have something in hand. And I want to force them to res. Admittedly, Audacity, they can score out with only no credits to start a turn because of the Maryland. So we might actually have to do a bunch of things. Red level to draw 2 cards. So they only have 2 clicks. So it looks like we're going to have another turn left. Oof. Random mad dash into HQ actually could be the correct play if we get it off the top. And we're going to clicklessly draw one card at least. Yeah, I think there must have been lines earlier to let us use Kabonesa Wu's ability with like self-modifying code, or sorry, with Simulchip too, to set up a bit more aggressively. The fact that we drew all our programs, like that's the worst case. It's one of the matchups where you're installing as few programs as possible. That's not too uncommon in a lot of matchups, but like that wasn't a good opening draw. We have actually like 4 straight up dead cards. Mind you, the Oiler can do something. Upgrade on HQ, don't know what that is. Probably a Giordano. If they res that, again, it's 3 credits. So we probably have to pressure that and this. So I don't know if they res everything. Maybe we can get SMC on the table. Discarded 2. There could be agendas in there. Start a turn. Take clicks. We'll pawn this. Order doesn't matter. Another endurance. Not great. Another dead draw. Okay. So we could Kabonesa Wu for, if we wanted to click for 2 credits if we want to bring down the Maryland with the Parisha. It's a possibility. We also have access to the Simulchip. Not much we can reinstall with it, but we have access to Simulchip because we've trashed the program this turn. I think we just run HQ. Like we obviously can't afford 8 here. We probably, I don't know if we need to install something. We have a target next turn for Aesops, but like the chance of them having it in hand is super high. It's more so whether we can get an SMC on the table to deal with Clot. And I think I need to see if they respect Clot. I think we need to check that. And maybe again, there's a virus in there, but I think we can run HQ here, break twice with the boat. And if that's the case, we can pull with Kabonesa to get self-modifying code, and we just Simulchip. Oh no, we trashed a card. We can't Simulchip. No, we just pull the SMC, then we install the Simulchip. We use the SMC for anything. Probably another Harbinger. Yeah, right? Just so we can pretend to threaten Clot. I think that's a cogent line of play. I'll see if they respect it. Again, if it's a virus in server 3, it gets a bit harder, but then money matters a bit more. I think trashing the Maryland's like kind of niche valuable here. I just don't know if we have the time to do that. We'll check after this. So here they actually might not res here because we don't have 8 credits. So at least at that point, we're forcing the res on the Giordano, which this has to be Giordano, right? Yeah, there you go. Okay, so it's 8 credits are in the run. Run is still considered successful though, so we do get the endurance counter, which is nice. But now they only have 2 credits, and it doesn't matter for endurance. So actually trashing the Maryland is not that important. On 4 credits, it doesn't hit huge breakpoints. With 4 credits, it means they actually could like Mavirus. So that's kind of important. But we need to get our SMC down. So we have to do Kabonesa Wu for SMC. Then we have to crack the SMC for something. Probably just, yeah, let's do it. So we crack the SMC and then install the Simulchip. I think we'll have enough money. Because we just have to threaten that we can pull a Clot at instant speed. Clot's a card that stops fast advance, so they can't score an agenda the turn's installed. But Clot is 2 credits, so it'll be a 4 credit play. So we have to make sure after all of this, we still have 4 credits, which actually that's kind of difficult. So I think we just over install this. We just do misdirection Simulchip, and we just trash this so that it doesn't remove itself from the game from what's it called? So I'm just going to install this, and whenever you install programs, you can trash any of your other programs, so it won't be removed from game. And now with 4 credits, I have to respect Clot. That might buy us a turn, or they might know that this list doesn't have Clot and we're struggling to put any pressure on. If we had a Mad Dash in our hand, I think we'd just be okay enough going for Stargate and trying to close the game off if we find, again, a 2-pointer. But I hope they don't call our bluff, that's for sure. We still have a Pawnshop engine, which is good. We're going to pawn the face down card. It's good to keep a face up card just because if we draw into a spec work, it requires trashing a program. Okay, we have to pop after single advancement. Oh, double advance. Hold on. Whoa. Gotta react with Clot. They didn't let us react with Clot. I don't think they noticed that. Yeah, I should have a window there to react with Clot. Now, unfortunately, we don't have Clot, but you have to, instill this fear. Because in theory, they have to let us, spend a click to Clot. It's okay. It wasn't the winning agenda. No, it's all good. It's all good. It wasn't the winning agenda. We wouldn't have Clot that. If they did install advance and let us, they'll pull the Clot. Now I don't want to go back because they know they're not a Clot. It's all good. I don't know if I would have pulled it. It's yeah, I guess we have to put our money. Yeah, now we're caught in a lie. Sorry about that. It's no worries. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to go back. Like I don't want to. It's like in theory they have to pause for it, even if we would decline. Okay, I'm just gonna let it go. Now they're scared that we have Clot, which is more important than having Clot to some extent. Please don't call it bluff. So I'm gonna go ahead and Aesop's this, get a card. Okay, that doesn't exactly help us. So now if we win off Stargate. They de-res the Maryland, so if it re-reses, it has 10 credits. Again, the game's gonna be on. It's actually, that de-res is probably wrong. because now the turn that they res it, they don't get any more money, and the game will be over before the additional money off of the Maryland's going to matter. It also stops them from reshuffling the deck, which having a Maryland on 2 means if we hit the top of R&D, they can shuffle. This is coming, I guess. They don't know we don't have clot. This is to our advantage. I think we just need to hit the top of R&D. We have something that we can trash with misdirection. Sorry, for Aesop's Pawnshop. Unfortunately, if we pull our simulchip with the clop, we'll trash the Reaver, but at least then we're not going to do it. So like, that's the difference. So what can we do here? Kabonesa Wu, we can actually just like pull the Stargate. Again, Mad Dash is a 1 in 26, so I think we're just gonna have to get our accesses, force the money out. I'm just gonna hit R&D here. If we hit a Mega Pre, it's bad, but they're on game point. Any agenda we hit at this point, like, is not good. Well, it's good for us. Echo. Oh wow, they're on Echo. So cleavers are a bit better. That's a really bad ice to res into the mid game, that's for sure. Checking server 3, like how long has it been there for? I think we might want to consider checking it. I don't know. I'm worried that it's a virus, and we have to deal with that sooner than later. I think spending 2 bow counters is not a hard ask. Again, we can spend 8 credits at some point. It's just not going to be now. And I think the game's going to be over before Daily Cast gets value. At least Daily Cast is in theory, like you can pawn this immediately. So you get 2 credits off of 3. So it's a click for 2 credits. That's like better than a lot of the other stuff we're doing. Do we check server 3? Oh, I don't know. I don't want to show that we have a cleaver, of course. We want them to install the Echo. Overclock's good, so that means we can actually get the Stargate down at reduced rate. So this is actually like credit neutral. I don't think we're gonna need another endurance, let alone we won't be able to afford it. We're gonna throw that out. Yeah, so this turn now they got no money off the Maryland. They allowed it to be around there longer, but if they didn't de-res the Maryland, they would have shuffled and they wouldn't have drawn the Echo. They would have drawn an unknown card, which sometimes is the difference between winning and losing. So the de-res on the Maryland, I think, doesn't always make sense in this sort of list, but it's something that you would consider doing in a more value-oriented longer game. But it's turn 9, right? Like they need a win very soon because we're going to get our Stargate down. Hope that matters. Our games also could have agendas in it. Our Mad Dash is 1 in 24. Some of these lists could be on 2 Mad Dash. I did think we saw that with some of the lat lists, just because getting your Mad Dash is the difference between the game closing on turn 10 and turn 15 sometimes. So having access to that is obviously quite okay. Giordano is unique. So at least if we run server 3, which could be their line here, is to push into server 3. And now they might have to play around clot, so they actually have to build a remote server. That could easily be the Echo off the top. There's a chance that we like Kabonesa Wu to trash the Maryland campaign. So we have to run this. It's going to be 8 credits. Maybe we just overclock that. So beginning of turn, we will trash the misdirection, I think. We can get more value from the daily casts. So Pawnshop this. That's exactly what you draw the spec work. We were trying to play around this because this needs an installed program. We can always like Kabonesa Wu for like a Harbinger and then just go ahead and spec work that. But that's the reason why trashing the daily cast might be better there. So we need 8 credits to hit this remote server, and we need to hit this remote server. There's a big chance that we lose. Can we afford to pay 8 credits? We can do an overclock. That helps a lot. Now, Aprecia doesn't help trash the Giordano because it's an upgrade, and Aprecia, for some reason, is only assets. For some reason, I guess. Yeah, we'll just overclock it. We have enough bow counters. Do it sooner than later. With 4 credits, there's not too much they can res. Again, this is a 4 credit run. The overclock's coming in. It's just behind my face. There's the Echo. Okay. This eventually, and by eventually, I mean very eventually, does make the endurance a bit scared. At that point, we break this for like 2 credits though, so whatever. So we're gonna have to break that again. Our endurance, we haven't been using it a lot. And we're just gonna go ahead and sail through here. We're gonna counter the white space. 2 separate teams that matter. We break 2 for 2 anyways. It's not our option to spend less than. Again, if we had enough money, in theory, we only have to break 1 of these, but it's not our choice. So it sees they res a Giordano here. Actually, they're short on resing credits on Giordano. This might be a totally dead overclock. I didn't realize that, but oh, okay, it's a Managarm. Okay, so we don't feel bad about that. So now we actually can use the 5 credits on the overclock pretty easily. And they're on no money. Okay, well, they'll have the Maryland. If we steal an agenda, they'll have more credits. But I'm glad we can actually use these overclock credits. So we'll pay 5. We have 5 credits here. And we can use these to trash the, could have used these to trash the thing. We'll access the agenda first. It's a Tranquility. Fantastic. Clickless card draw. Managarm, thinking. I think if we trash the Managarm, we're down to 5 credits. Then we can Kabonesa Wu back up the Aprecia. We can run server 5 for 1 credit, and then we can spec work it. I think that's fine. We can do all of this. Because again, we'll probably have to run this from over and over again because I think they're going to respect clot. Because we made a big stink about it. Aprecia. We'll run server 5. Bring this thing down for 1 credit out of pocket. This is where Kabonesa Wu's ability is awesome. It feels so good. They shuffled R&D, so the top of R&D is now unknown. Not that we did know it. We'll just go spec work this before it's removed from the game. We drew into our Stargate. Fantastic. We have this down, which is 3 credits and a card draw on a turn where we don't Aesop. So I reckon here we might just Aesop's the daily cast to get after we trigger our order. So we get 2 credits off of it, sell it for 3. Yeah, it's good value. And on 0 credits, they can't exactly fast advance out here. Audacity would need at least 1 credit. So they could do, yeah, so they can't. And we have the last Elevagar, which is the only other thing they could install credit Audacity out. Tranquility in the remote server means if they res that and jam every turn, like we have to go check it. At some point, again, we can start saving boat counters on this and just pay 3 credits. I think our money's actually taxed out a bit more than our boat counters right now. And we have access to Stargate, which 1 in 20 to hit the mad dash that could close the game out. We haven't seen a single spin doctor. So even if we get agendas in the bin, they might not stay there for long. I think a spin doctor is going to hit server 3 sooner than anything else. The problem is, like, if they don't have money, I don't think we have to run the remote server. Like, that could be a Rashida or a spin doctor. We want to check that out sooner than later. Yeah, I think we do pawn the daily cast. We just need the 3 credits on card draw. Because we have so much more money in our hand, or in our deck, we just need to get to it. Okay, that's a spin doctor. We definitely want to deal with that before we Stargate. They still have no money, and 1 credit is a huge difference of world. Because with 1 credit, they could have rezzed the Tranquility, got 2 credits from that. With 1 credit, they can play red level clearance for a clickless credit, because you can get the click back, gain 2, pay 1. All that stuff does change, like the breakpoints and what combos they can get access to. They also seem to be on predictive planogram, which is something they can play from 0. Just gain 3 instead of the card draw. We are, in theory, still threatening a non-existing clot. Question is whether they can count the influence. I don't think we've shown enough influence. Now they're on 1 credit, so things change drastically. So we have to red in the spin doctor. We're going to put down the Stargate. We're going to hit Stargate. And if there's agendas in there, we probably don't steal them. Unless there's like a spin doctor coming up sooner than later. Because we don't want to give them money. HQ is probably where the agendas are the safest. Take clicks. So we'll take the daily cast money first, then we'll pawn it. So this we got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it was a click for 4 credits to install it. Not bad. So we'll run server 7. They'll probably crack that. I reckon they want that. Yeah, there you go. So let's see what they take back. We haven't seen any Audacities yet, so it's 2 unseen cards. Actually, those might have been agendas, which is totally fine for us when we put down the Stargate. Then we hit the Stargate, and then last click, it's either we run to pick up agendas, which is unlikely unless they're on real 3-pointers for some reason, which I don't think they would be. We can't steal a Cabo with only 1 click left. An agenda 5-3 that requires some Mega Pre. Okay. So we know where the win is. Where technically they could fast advance out if they have an agenda in hand, but they have to respect Clot. So what do we do here? We could, oh, we're 1 click short. We could in theory simulchip back the Stargate. Have we trashed the program? No. And then hit the second Mega Pre, but we can't steal them. So I'm just going to install this. And we can crack this on their turn to draw a card. But we know the top of the deck is a hedge fund, which is a dead card. So it's all about whether they respect the Clot here. Which they could have the win in hand, but they're trying to play around Clot. And they don't have enough money to do anything cute with Mavirus, which is the way that you get around Clot. Yeah, this has been a messy game, I think, on my side, but we're squeaking through it. And I'm hoping the Clot threat is holding them down. Red level, okay, they can quickly draw with this. So now we know the Mega Pre's in hand. So, you know, Giordano, whoops. This also gives them the breathing room to maybe find the 2nd or 3rd Spin Doctor. Sometimes these lists are always on 3 Spin Doctors. It's not like some of the other HB lists that's sometimes considered 2, but they kind of need the money here. When we're on 4 agenda points, it's totally possible for them to lose an agenda to bait out the Clot, which a lot of times I think is the right play, right? Like just make us produce the Clot. If we don't, they win. If they do, we're on 5 points, right? Like not that big of a difference. All right, install on server 8. Looks like another Spin Doctor. Could just be a Maryland. And on their turn, we'll know free lunch. We might as well do it on our turn or on their turn so we can maybe trash something. And Reaver's only installed cards, so you don't get off Stargate. But if we run server 8 and trash like a Maryland, upgrade on remote server, looks like it might be a Giordano. They are credit short resing that though. Maybe a Managarm. And if it's a Managarm, it doesn't stop the Stargate. Chrism, they can't res either. So on their turn, we'll do this to gain 3 credits on a card draw. Start a turn. We have no more economy. We need to keep all this on the table. No Pawnshop, sorry. All right. So what can we diesel into? I think we need to run server 8 first before we Stargate in case it is a Spin Doctor. They have 2 credits though. They can definitely fast advance out with certain pieces. Yeah, there you go. So we want to do this obviously before we Stargate. I thought this one might be a Maryland, but 2nd Spin Doctor makes a fair bit of sense. And they're probably going to remove that from the game. Mind you, the Mega Pre is in there. And we know they have a Mega Pre in hand. And if they res the Giordano, mind you, an R&D HQ is wide open. But we still have a lot of work to do. All right, we don't get a counter on Endurance because the server disappeared. Because it literally doesn't exist anymore. So forcing out the Giordano res is pretty good for us. Can we afford 5? I think we can. So just Stargate. So the Managarm res, mind you, the Giordano they can't afford. They could res an Echo or White Space. Let's see what they res here, if anything. Again, we want them just to spend money. Like we could bounce off of this. I do think the disruption from the Stargate is worth 5 credits. And then we draw a card if we trash it. So I'm gonna pay 5 for credits here. Whoa. That's the game. That is the game right there. Trash the Audacity. Oh, wait, because of the Stargate, we can't trash the Managarm. Wait, I might have done that wrong. Hold on. I forgot I couldn't trash the Managarm. I totally forgot we couldn't access the Managarm. How do we deal with this? So we know on top of the deck is the Project Vitruvius. So we run back, that's 5 credits, and we can't deal with the Managarm. Oh no! We should have ran first. We knew that was a Managarm. We should have done a normal run, not a Stargate run. Yeah, that shouldn't have been a Stargate run. Whoops. Okay, at least they have no money. The Audacity is out. We probably, I can't res. Yeah. Okay, Propeller's 1. That's worth installing. So I think we just run back, pay 5, steal 1 of the agendas. That gives them money though, which is bad. Because then they consider clotting. Because if we don't have 4 credits, they can like play around clot. Question is how many Audacities they have in hand. I imagine they have to have at least 1. They're probably on 2 Audacities, if not 3. Oh, thinking. Burst economy in the deck. Like we could always like diesel into a creative commission. I think we have a couple left. Literally, yeah, straight up a couple left. Spec work off the top deck could be okay, but it requires more clicks because we have to set it up with Kabonesa. We could always simul-chip in the Stargate, but then we would lose to fast events from hand, which on 3 red level clearance in the bin and all the Elvagao out is impossible. Unless they have Subliminal and they've been holding it. So we Stargate back, it's 5 credits. And then we're not on game point until we hit a Mad Dash. We could diesel into a Mad Dash. That wins. Unlikely. But that we're hard committing to that. It puts us off some other lines. Diesel into Mad Dash. It's a 1 in 18, but we see technically 3 cards, right? But if we draw the Mad Dash, we win. Because as soon as we run, we pay 5. Then we're down on 1 credit. And at that point, we can't throw in Clot. I would just Mad Dash. Never Mad Dash. Okay, so this is worth 4 credits. This is worth 3 credits and a card. So we're going to know that agenda on top of the deck. We still can Mad Dash later. So they might have to draw up a fair bit. And I think we know they have a Mega Pre in hand. Well, actually not no. It's likely. And here we have to throw out 1 card. Daily Cast on its own is not the worst because you can get 5 credits off of it for install for 3. So it's not bad. I think the Oiler is probably the least necessary. Actually, this is, yeah, I don't think they have strong barriers. The Propeller, though, is like the easiest things that we can pawn. So I'll do that. But we just need to make sure we always have 4 credits so that we can do simul-chip into self-modifying code into Clot, right? So I don't want to go to low credits, stealing an agenda off the top and giving them enough money to Audacity out. All right, so they drew into hand the Vitruvius. There's a Luminal Transubstantiation, a 3/2 agenda on top of the deck. We know there's probably a Mega Pre in hand, I think. I'm not sure if they fixed that with the Spin Doctor. They might have. And probably another agenda in hand, mind you. They have 8 cards. Oh yeah, they probably have a lot in hand. Credit. I wonder if they're going to do the Mega Pre remote play. At least that we check way easier than anything else. The last Spin Doctor is also impactful because that's how they can clicklessly card draw and like shuffle R&D. So the winning agenda is not on top of the deck. There's a Tranquility. Install the remote server. So they're not fast advancing out here again. All the 1-pointers are accounted for. Otherwise, it's really hard to play around Clot. So they have 2 credits here. Could be the last Spin Doctor. That is the fear. There's a chance on the last turn we end up pawning the Endurance. Depends how much money they have. But like, we're not using this that much. We're going to use it for the remote server. And if that's an agenda in the remote server, like we want to check R&D first to some extent, because otherwise they can draw the Luminal into hand. If like it's an agenda, they draw 2. So we're really hoping the 1 of 15 Mad Dash off the no free lunch. Just credit. Okay. Okay. Could be a Maryland again. The Marylands are unaccounted for. 2 face downs have been in archives for a minute. Could also be just a Spin Doctor. They could be throwing out our cards in archives. I think we run this pretty cheaply, right? Like it's just some counters. On their turn, gain 3, Mad Dash, never Mad Dash. Another simul-chip is not bad. I think with another simul-chip, we'll actually consider pawning the simul-chip. No, then we might as well use the simul-chip, right? Ah, Shaver. There's so many triggers that are like so important that like have way more branching paths than a lot of like anarchs or criminals that, you know, like this has a lot of flexibility into it, which is super valued. Okay, here. No, I think we're okay. I don't think we pawn anything. Okay, what do? We want to check server 3. Again, if it's an agenda, they draw, that's bad. We can always diesel. We find the Mad Dash, we could win off the top of R&D, barring server 3 being specifically the last Spin Doctor. And even then, we could just randomly win, I guess. Unlikely. There's only 2 more 3/2s in the list, right? Like they have 1 on top of the deck, 1 in hand. Not that it matters. Any agendas win. But for us, it's important because we can mad dash off the top. Pinsel. Went into that turn not having a strong plan, and that felt bad. So I think we run server 3. They still have to respect Clot. I think we do run server 3. Then we have 2 clicks left. We can consider the top of R&D, which again, they still have to play around Clot. We'll see if they call it. 1 in 11 to hit the mad dash. And then we can always install the Harbinger and install Creative Commission. We're run server 3. All right, so Endurance sailing through again. Breakers. Who needs breakers? Continue to counter ice. 2 cards for this again. We could light a fire, but we're going to need our money again. There's a mana garment. It's doing something. And if that's also the, what's it called? We have to deal with it. If it's a virus in server 3, we need to get that done. All right, and we're going to breach. It's a Mega Pre. Okay, so that draws cards. So we had to run that or we would have lost. Now it's all about whether they call the Clot out or not on us. If we run HQ, it's 10 credits to get a single access, and we could win off of it. We know that they have 2 3/2s in hand. So unfortunately, yeah, that's 10 credits. So it's all about whether they call the Clot out or not. If they call the Clot out on the 3/2 and they fail that call, we win the game. So it's whether or not they have looked at the list and know whether we're on Clot. We made a stink about the Clot though, so I'm hoping that buys us some time. I think it would be totally poetic if they call us out on the Clot. All right. Sportsmetal is hard. Yeah, we're doing okay. We're holding it down. We do need to run HQ at some point. The problem is like Giordano is a hell of a card. Again, play Pinhole Threading. Pinhole Threading on Archives would solve a lot of credits. It would save a lot of credits. And I think the Pinsel and NWE, when they wrote up the list, they talked about how you can get what's it called in here? Pinhole Threading. Hedge Fund. That means they're not fast dispensing out. That's really good. It's going to get trickier to run the mode server though. That's for sure. And we now know, I think we know 4 points in hand. So that's an issue. They can probably res on R&D. But like, I just don't know how we have to like, we have to get into HQ sooner than later. We just have no multi-access to do that with. I do think we have the time here to install, what saves us more money? They both save us 1. I think we're going to install the Fractor. Maybe we'll see what's on R&D first. Yeah, if we just ran R&D, right? Like we knew they didn't have money for Giordano. I totally forgot Stargate. You don't access the upgrades, but of course they just drew second click. It's a bit awkward. Only 9 cards left. Forward face down in Archives too. I'm kind of interested what those are. And next turn, we're going to get some good money in card draw. It's 3 credits off the Harbinger. Eventually, it'll be 6 credits if the game goes long enough. And they don't have a remote server they can score within. So they're going to try and struggle to play around it on non-existing Clot. That might be the 1 Mega Pre they have in hand. Had in hand for a while. So we know that they have a Luminal in there and they have the Vitruvius. I don't think they discarded those. Got to go back. Going to install breakers here, actually. I do think that's more likely to be like either a Spin Doctor or the Maryland. Just something to make us run. As they are taxing out our endurance. But luckily for us, oh, we actually threw out a decoder. Oh, that was bad. They drew last click. But HQ is pretty safe. Yeah, we're going to use our simul chip, I think, to get our decoder and break white space for 0. And then we have to install another simul chip to continue to threaten Clot. Do we just get enough money that we can deal with Giordano? Like, the problem is that it's only single accesses. That might be a Spin Doctor. They might have actually discarded something. So start a turn. We'll pawn Harbinger, draw card. Ika. Okay, another nice enough thing to pawn. It's a click for 3 credits and a card draw, at least at some point. So we can install this. We can just run. Yeah, I think that's good. We just install this, run, install simul chip. Obviously, this is cheaper, but like, yeah, in this situation, it would be better, obviously, to have a Hagen. That's often the barrier that shows up in these lists, or even a Meridian is good enough, especially with Giordano. I don't know. You don't see a lot of this card. And it's like very comparable to Vanilla or Ice Wall, and you're seeing people decide which way to go on it. I'm not a big fan of this ice. It's like really bad draw late game. I think we just run it here. We've already trashed the card, so I'm not very excited to like simul chip back in our Oiler. Oh, sorry. Ran R&D on accident. We're running server 3. You got to mash that button so they don't accidentally resin ice and you get information. With 9 credits, they could consider resin ice for sure. But we need to keep running this. Of course, the agenda could be in there, but on top of that, it could just be a virus, which is the way that they play around our Clot. All right, Echo. We break it out for 1 credit with a cleaver. Saves you an influence on the paperclip, and if you're playing endurance, let alone Takobi, it deals with the downsides of this thing where it's hard to deal with some of the bigger ice in the game. Higher strength ice, I mean. I don't know how much is to break a date award with this, but it's pretty penny. We can either play 3 credits here, or we can use the bow counter. I'm gonna use the bow counter. Just because we need the credits to make you run HQ to win the game. Will we get a successful run? So it's only 1 real power counter. All right, so it looks like it's Giordano in the remote server. So they're trashing the 1 on HQ to res the 1 on server 3. which this one in server 3 doesn't matter for us. We still get the successful run on endurance. We don't need access here. So we're going to definitely end the run here. And now we can run HQ. And we have, you know, there's 2 agendas in there, probably in 5 cards, unless they're in archives. So we can get easily 2 runs on HQ. We can break a single sentry. We always can pull out a decoder if we need to with the simul chip. So we pawned a harbinger at the top of the turn, right? Yeah, so our simul chip could be used easily. Oh, it's a macrophage. Oh, that's interesting. We don't care about this. If some virus hate, that's interesting. We have no viruses in the heap. The more we draw, also, the less they have to respect, what's it called? Clot in theory, because it's more likely to be in our hand, which we can't produce at an instant speed. We can let this all fire. None of this matters. We have a single link. So if you're not familiar with traces, traces have a base strength. These show up way more in standard than they do in startup. So trace 4 is the first trace here to purge virus counters. We don't care about this. The trap was set. And the idea is that they can spend a credit to boost the trace. So they can spend 3 credits to make it a trace 7. And then it goes back to us and we start with our base link, which is that number in the top left corner, 1. And then we can boost equally 1 credit to boost our trace for 1. And if we tie it or beat it, the trace is unsuccessful. So trash 1 virus, that doesn't matter. The only one that's going to matter here is the last one, which is trace 1 and the run. This is a very niche card, but it's very powerful to deal with viruses because it's 7 strength with 4 subroutines that are pretty relevant against a virus deck. But it's 3 turrets. Like, those are absurd numbers. All right, that doesn't matter. Remove a virus in the heap. Again, if that gets rid of a clot, that's a name of the game. That's a totally different game here. And then 1 end the run. So here we have 1 link. They didn't boost it, so we go through this for free. So I think we have a 40% chance to steal the game here. Maryland. If we trash that, we can come back and then make it a 50% chance to win the game. We are still threatening clot. We're going to go back. Yeah, a lot of times opponents will only fire, or corporations will only fire the bottom trace because the first 3 have no impact on the game. You don't have to fire all of them. You could just click on them and manually be like, trace 1. Yeah, there you go. Just the last one. That's the only one that matters. It's a shortcut. It's technically not game legal, but if they have no impact on the game, whatever. So here they could boost. They can make it, 4, end the run, trace 1. We can always pay 3 credits to get an access. We'd be glad to do that anyways. They're not boosting. So again, the link matters. Again, Kabonesa Wu has link. Lat has a link. There's some shapers with link. Your server, 50%. Get out. Get out. No way. There's 2-3-2 agendas in there if I'm not mistaken. So we know it's biotic labor. I think it's, unless it's in archives, it seems to be the Luminal. It seems to be the Vitruvius. And Audacity here, in theory, we're still threatening clot. Oh my, this has been absurd. Maybe we need to check archives. They might have thrown them out. Again, 5 cards in archives. They could have just binned one of them. Install here. After a single advance, we have to react to clot, in theory. Because they can Audacity to get the last 2. Think again, there was a 50% chance there. They gain 2 credits. They advance, we have to react. We don't have a reaction. You got to bluff. You got to bluff. They drew next click. A bit awkward. But now we know if we want to run the remote server, it's going to cost us 10 credits. So that's the big game, is whether it's 10 credits in the remote server or whether we just hit HQ a couple times. And I think there's only 1 agenda in HQ potentially. We will have the money to sustain this. Okay, second ice. That does change the HQ run a bit better, but it makes the HQ access a bit more likely to connect. Can they bait us to spend 10 credits on the remote server? All right, start a turn. We'll pawn this. We have the mad dash. So even if we find a 1-pointer, we can win the game. So we have a couple lines here, right? Let's talk through all the lines. So what we can do, we can run a remote server, pay 10 credits, go down to 2, access, maybe win off an agenda. If it's a 1-pointer, we won't win, so we'd want to mad dash the remote server. Again, mad dash, if it doesn't connect, we just take a meat damage. Not that impactful. Otherwise, we could go for the top of R&D. Assuming we're counting to, what is this? This is a 45 card minimum deck, so 49 cards, or 20 to 21 agenda points. Assuming there's a 2-pointer in there, we're at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there's 7 points among other cards, 2 in hand. So there's about 5 points left in R&D. So I do think there's also an option that we could just do Stargate at the top of R&D, pay 5 credits. And if we hit a 1-pointer, we could mad dash archives. Now, if there's a spin doctor in server 3, then we don't lose. So that's totally fine. 5 points in R&D means it's very likely that we hit a 1-pointer. Like, we're assuming there's another 2 more mega prees. We saw El Vagaos. Maybe they're on a global food initiative as well. Usually there's 2 of them in the list. I think actually it might be safe just to Stargate here, because I think there's a chance that Maryland's in the remote server. Yeah, I think we just Stargate, pay 5. And then if that's bad, we can run HQ. I think that's a pretty good line, because I don't think we can afford to pay 10 for a Maryland and have a chance. Because we also still have to try and clot, right? Here they could res again. We have access to endurance that probably should get us through. The Res the Echo would only have one subroutine. Again, once these hit 3 subroutine, that's where they get interesting. But hey, we do have a cleaver. So they're spending money here. That's good for us. So we will endurance that. They are taxing out our boat meaningfully. Mind you, we do have access to Oiler, but that does get rid of our clot threat. Keep saying clot threat. It's technically true. It's there. I know we don't have it. Maybe I was scummy. Breach server. We'll pay 5. There's a global food initiative. That's an agenda. Let's see if there's a spin doctor here. Good game, well played. Looks like it's not. What a game. What a ridiculous game. Man, the long Sportsmetal games are absolutely buck wild. There might be more agendas in there. Yeah, there was. Oh man, we could have just mad dashed archives. So it made sense. They had the Mega Pre for a while. Oh, good game. Sportsmetal Mega Pre. Okay. So yeah, the last point was in there. A lot of times this deck doesn't mind to throw out agendas because if you check archives and it doesn't win you the game, it pushes them forward. And that could be all you need. You had 2 3-2s in there last turn, right? Nancy, what? Get out. They had an Anansi in their deck in the bottom 5. 4 influence for this 8 cost res that would have not killed us, but it would have been annoying. It would have been bad, that's for sure. But that's absolutely amazing. Just the one face check Anansi that can close out games. And I don't know if they had the money for it on all board states. So they paid 8 for that. I'm pretty happy. Bottom 2, that's amazing. That's awesome. And they did have 2 3-2 agendas in HQ, it seems. But that'll take us to 8 agenda points. And you saw our opening start. Like, we had good enough economy. We had the endurance. Again, you see the weakness of not having pinhole threading means we actually have to interact with some of these. And I have no doubt we didn't play that perfectly. I'm not very good at Shaper. Tithe, just annoying enough too, eh? We'd probably let that fire, honestly. Yeah, not having clot. Oh, by the way. Oh, you gotta let him know. Still gotta play around it. I felt a bit scummy. But it's something that that you always need to play around. Yeah, our opponent is realizing too, when we run 4 points, just force the issue. Again, if we don't have a clot, you win. If we do have a clot, that's fine. They have to still run to steal the agenda, and then your Sportsmetal ability triggers veteran move. Yeah, it's wild to see a deck like this that doesn't have clot. And at Worlds, it's going to be super interesting to see whether people say, like, that's the NWE list. It actually doesn't have clot, and then just get, like, absolutely hosed when someone pulls out clot. Well, thanks for the game, eh? All right. Still playing standard. This is the NWE good stuff. Shaper deck, the Reavershop sort of list. Our econ engine is Aesop's Pawnshop with Reaver. 3 influence. Yeah. Apex card that gives you card draw on top of it. This is not really a meta deck though. Oh, no worries. Our opponent says they're not playing a meta deck, so we'll see what it is. They're playing near a hub, so a fair bit of assets for sure. So we're going to want to get our Parisha down sooner than later. Our opening economy is good. We have some card draw. We have the Harbinger and the Aesop's Pawnshop. I'm trying to figure out whether we need to, as soon as turn 1, pull down our Reaver. I think a lot of times you do want to. It costs you 4 credits, where you use Kabonesa Wu's ability with self-modifying code and then pull out the Reaver. So it doesn't get removed from game. You can't pull it directly. This is not a list that's running like rejig, which is classically what a lot of the Kabonesa Wu decks did to set up quickly, but I think we can keep this. And we are off to the races. So Near Earth Hub, 17 influence. Used to be one of the most powerful abilities in the game a long time ago. When Fast Advance NBN was very strong. So we'll see what we have to do here on the table to keep them down. Again, Parisha is pretty good, but if we pull it from our deck, it will be removed from the game unless we self-modifying code into the Parisha, which sometimes isn't wrong. There's nothing really on the table that if we don't run turn 1 is disastrous. The worst case is Rashida Yahim, where they get 3 credits and 3 cards. That's obviously good. Or if they score out an AR Enhanced Security, which is a 3-1 agenda that gives us a tag the first time a turn we trash something. I'm going to say I'm playing Shaper and I'm going to set up. We get a misdirection here, it'd be pretty good. Okay, this is an absurd start. I think we have Aesop's, we have the Harbinger, and then we can last click, get our economy up with Creative Commission, and that could just do it. We'll see what they have on the table. And a lot of times playing against Shaper, you know that they might spend some time setting up. They have a lot of these engine cards they need to install. Amani Sanai. Okay, so it looks like they do have the 3-1. At least when they res this, like we have Link. This is not that bad. As Rashida. Is there a Bladderwort? No. Wonder why they res this. Maybe they're going to score something out, but this bounces things to hand. Seamless. Are they crypto crashing us? Oh my, we didn't run and we're going to get punished from it. They had an agenda and yeah. Oh, tomorrow's headline. So we're going to get a tag. So they can trash our Aesop's Pawnshop. That's a disgusting start. And Amani's strength 3 to return something to hand. I think we actually can just return something to hand because none of these all cost a click. And I think our clicks at this point, our clicks worth 2 credits. Our clicks worth, and they're probably going to trash the Pawnshop. So I think returning this to hand doesn't matter that much because we're not going to have an Aesop's. Oh, we returned the Aesop's. I'm pretty sure they would have trashed the Aesop's and returned the Harbinger to hand. Okay, we still have to clear the tag. At least we can do that on tempo with no free lunch. I thought that would go worse for us. Like a crypto crash there would have been disgusting. And they installed and drew last click technically because Near Earth Hub draws a card when you build a new remote server. So we have to deal with the money sooner than later. It's obviously a bit expensive. So we can do the no free lunch here. I think we will go ahead and just spend a bit of money here to set up. So use Kabonesa for self-modifying code. Mind you, Kabonesa lets you pull a program from your deck, non-virus, costing 1 less, but it'll be removed from game if it stays installed at the end of the turn. So that's why you go for the self-modifying code and then use the self-modifying code to pull out something like a Reaver. From here, we can install the no free lunch, which we will trash to draw 3 cards. Or sorry, remove a tag and draw a card. Oh, hold on. Do you mind? I forgot we trashed something that turn. There was no reason to do that. We could have waited to their turn to draw a card. Our sequencing was actually really bad. Yeah, because we already trashed a card, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and just reinstall that. Okay. So we've only spent 1 click so far because I'm going to do that at the beginning of their turn. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's the idea. All right, so we can get the Aesops down. That'll set us up. Now, if they score on an agenda here, we have to deal with Amani. That's not great. So I think we need a draw up here. Again, the Prisha we'll have access to sooner than later, but we need to get our economy up. I don't know if they're going to score at another agenda here. If we run an Axis, we're a bit weak to hard-hitting news. I don't know how much money we can spend trashing stuff. I think we actually can. We also can just float the tag and gain 3 credits. That's comparable to clearing the tag. The tag is, 2 credits on a click, so it's like 3 credits. I think we need to check server 4. I'm worried. I don't know what that could be. Probably daily business show. Chance of it being Rashida, not 0. I think there might be an agenda on the table. We could just risk all of this to hard-hitting news. At least at that point, we'll have we'll be able to clear the tags. I'm okay with this. I'm going to call I respect our opponent. I think they're putting agendas on the table more often than not. All right, the Wi-Fi just kicked out for a second. That happens. If you just wait around a bit on JNet. Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right, we'll see what they bounce here. So that could have been a problem if they had a seamless launch in hand. Monty Sinai, trace 4. Yeah, we're going to get something returned to hand. That's obnoxious. Probably the Reaver. They're boosting into it, trace 6. Again, we can boost to 5, so Reaver goes back to hand. That's still fine enough, I think. I think here we just install the Aesop's Pawnshop. We go down to 3 credits. Still think we just crack this. We can't float the tag with the Aesops on the table, and it's going to be hard enough for them to hard-hitting news us. We'll remove the tag. We don't draw a card, but whatever. And then I still think we Aesops away the Harbinger and then get down the Reaver. Because once we have, we're going to have to deal with the Mani Sinai. It has been quite impactful. But once we get our Prisha down somehow, this also Reaver triggers when we trash one of their cards if we're not, trashing our own stuff. Because it's the first time an installed card. It doesn't have to be ours. Server 5, card draw. They don't really have the money for hard-hitting news. Spin Doctor to draw. They could do credit hard-hitting news. Trace 4, though, means we could spend all our money to duck it, and we'll still have Harbinger Aesop's Pawnshop to get some economy back. So that'll be okay. Card in server 6 and Planogram for 3 credits. Yeah, cool. They're going to discard a card here, but they have a Spin Doctor on the table. We have to deal with the money sooner than later. The question is, how do we get a Prisha? All right, we pawn that. We just need money. I don't think we have to value at the card draw here. Drawing into what? We can pull a Prisha from a deck and then trash it. Not amazing. Second Aesop's not great. We could just score on an agenda here to bounce once more. At least we'll have enough money. We need to draw into an econ card. We're going to install one thing here. Installing the casts is, again, a bit slow. Because if we do this, we go down to 1 credit and then Amani hits us really hard. So do we need the econ or do we need the card draw here? Card draw gets us into more of our econ, that's for sure. I'm going to get this down. We're going to click for a credit. There's a chance you want to hold on to another Aesop's Pawnshop, considering if they trash this one, we have no economy engine. That actually might be wrong, because I do think there's ways that they can sneak out a tag. It's just a daily business show, though. Okay, so nothing on the table, probably not going to score at this turn, but this filters their draw. You need to deal with this sooner than later, because otherwise they're drawing into their best cards. They're not agenda flooding. They're drawing to ice when they need to. Daily business show is a heck of a card. It also gets much more valuable when they fire Spin Doctor on our turn. If they res one, I mean. At least we can transition maybe into a mid game somewhere. We have to play around Crypto Crash, which they're on. So we're going to Pawnshop. That'll draw us a card. Spec work. So here I think a lot of times the play is Kabonesa Wu, that we can get down our Prisha. We can trash the Amani Sinai. In theory, we should probably run Spin Doctor last. So we Kabonesa Wu for the misdirection, for the Prisha. Do we just SMC for it? No. The thing is, we can Kabonesa Wu for the Prisha, and then we can go ahead and, spec work the Prisha. So then we have to simul-chip it back, which I think we're okay with doing that. But if we, I don't know. I need to get the Prisha to stick. I need to get it to stick. That's the problem. But we need to bring this down. We're going to spend more money trashing with this. I'm just going to do it. I don't know if this is right. Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, I'm not very good at Shaper. I play Shaper less out of any faction. It has the biggest, trees of what you can do, which is why a lot of people find it to be very satisfying. It's exciting to watch at top tables too, because you see a lot of player expression. I do value that a lot. All right, let's just do it. Harbinger. Run server 2. Eventually, we're going to need our boat down. This is our card in our deck to deal assets. Again, 2 credits a turn is an immense amount of value. This is going to be removed from game, though. So we'll trash it. 2 credits off of this. This is going to draw us a lot, but we're going to have 1 click left, and we're going to have 7 cards in hand. All right. Yeah, I guess we can do that. Overclock's good. We can, in theory, overclock down a daily business show. That can hit them. We can also run server 7. At this point, like, the scary thing is if there is a ping, but they don't have that much money. Otherwise, we have to discard something. I think the worst card in our hand is either Cleaver or Propeller. And Cleaver is not good at dealing with IP block, but it's good at dealing with all the other barriers we expect. I think we're going to throw out the Propeller. Admittedly, Propeller is something that you can Pawnshop. Actually, that's probably better. Because we get through a lot of the sentries for free, and then we end up pawning it. That's probably for the best. We can get that down. And we can charge server 7 next turn. We actually might consider doing it now. I'm assuming it's a barrier on the remote server. Yeah, maybe that was a bad play. A lot of economy in hand. I don't think we're at the point where we can install endurance. Actually, next turn we probably could. And SMCs, we only have 1 accounted for, so we can actually pull anything from our deck with overclock for just about free. Man, this is hard. I think I'm gonna throw out the Cleaver. Let's hope. Again, 3 simulchips still on the list. So a lot of the cards we throw out, we'll find them later and install them clicklessly or for free. I find myself more often than not simulchipping for Harbingers just because it's an absurd amount of value with the Pawnshop, what's it called? The Pawnshop engine with Reaver. And here, just like trashing their stuff is good. We could pay 4 credits to draw a card. That's good enough. Remote server. Another remote server. We need to check some of these. Something in server 7. Okay. We are not going to pawn anything. We're going to try and get our draw off the Reaver. So we're going to start with the money. And we'll just start checking things. Again, there could be traps here, like a Prysac, a news team. Hard to get a list. It's a Maryland campaign. They can res that. I think we'll run server 7 next. Because if it's a ping, we need to clear the tag. So we don't want to do that last click. If it's a ping, we break it for 1 credit. No further action. I'm scared. New cards Rashida. That goes down. We draw a card. So I think it's on the Sansan City grid, right? It's an Anoetic Void. What? Whoa. Whoa. 17 influence. Got a lot of space for that sort of stuff. We can make 1 last run here. Again, we did get our card draw. We don't have it. I think I'm going to not check server 9 because seeming we found the Rashida, which is hopefully the impactful thing. And we'll just get down this daily cast. So we have some economy in the background. We are going to have to get down the daily business show. I think that's where our overclock is going to land up. Just because it's technically 1 credit to draw a card and trash a daily business show. They also didn't res their Maryland. Oh, Regolith. That's better money for them. Probably going to have to deal with that sooner than the daily business show. Dang. Would have wanted to trash that instead of playing the daily cast, but wasn't expecting it. All right, they're back in terms of economy. Again, they got 8 credits off of this, and we leave them. That's 9 more credits. We can't let them have that. I don't think we're going to overclock that. Or sorry, 6 more credits on it. So we get a clickless card draw if we just overclock the daily business show. I'm going to do that. Again, the longer that this is up, the better their card draw is. We also want to shuffle archives at some point, because if there's agendas in there, then they'll end up drawing them. I think that's usually in our advantage. So server 6, we'll charge it. There's only 2 overclocks in this list. And we need to get our back our pre-show. I think maybe the way that we used our pre-show was a bit inefficient. All right, we got an Ika. That's something we can just pawn. We'll drop once here. We can run server 9. Again, we're struggling to get their endurance credits up. We need to keep their money down. Again, they might actually have like big enough ice, like, toll booth, stuff like that. If they're playing Anoetic, like their small ice is not as impactful. It doesn't combine as well. And I think we just drop once more. Again, Hardy News we're good with. That's a good top deck. We can play that next turn for sure. We could always consider just trashing our own daily cast after we get 2 more cards off of it. Maryland's finally res there. I think they just forgot last turn. Server 10 draws a card. Again, now their card draw is unfiltered, so the agendas are going to start hanging out in HQ. We have a read that they're on a more jammy suite, so while we'll probably still sing Bologna's, I don't think it's the only thing we're going to see. Hard-hitting news. Okay, that's totally fine. Like, they still have to spend 3 more credits on this. Again, this is the fork, so it's 7. Okay, so now we have 4 tags. Hard-hitting news, mind you, a very important card in the standard format. But our deck is pretty good at dealing with it. The question is, how do we do that? Do we need to pop the daily cast? No, we don't. We need to pull our breaker from our deck and then spend 2 clicks and 4 credits. So I don't think we need to do that. There might be a fork if there's something on the table that's important. They could have just put it behind server 7 though, so like, I doubt it. So we'll definitely obviously do the daily cast first. Whether we pawn this for 3 card draw, I don't think we do. I think here all we do is we use Kabonesa, use Kabonesa's ability, pull out the misdirection, then we clear the tags for 2 clicks, and then we just install an Ika. Or we'll just install the Oiler. Yeah, that's fine. And this will trigger the draw off the Reaver anyways. Yeah, so we don't have to use our thing today. Or we don't have to use our Aesop's this turn to get value. So we'll do the misdirection. Again, the good way to deal with a lot of tags, we'll spend 4 credits. So clear 4 tags. And then we're just going to install, the oiler puts us down to 1 credit. It's not amazing. The Eca is like, you know, we just want to trash this so it's in our bin so we can get it later with the self-modifying code. Or sorry, with the simul chip. Otherwise, this will be removed from the game. I'm going to install the oiler. It might be right to just install the Eca. I'm worried about the sentry face checks actually more. So I'm just going to trash this while installing another breaker. And again, whenever you install programs, you can trash any other programs that draws us a card because we just trashed something. One of our installed cards. So second Maryland. Okay. If we take those down, they're going to have very little money. Again, this is where we need to get our simul chip down and get our pre-shot sooner than later. And we're going to pawn our daily cast after getting 5 credits off of it, which is the most you can get off this with the combination of Aesops. All right, they just drew a card without installing. So they have cards in hand that they don't want to just windmill into remote servers. That's always important to know. They're looking for something. And that could be an agenda. Again, with 5 credits, they can't res too much of this ice. We could force a res, then maybe trash their stuff in server 8 and server 10. But we're going to have way better money than it looks. Because here, we're going to do a daily cast first, then our pawn shop to pawn it for 3 credits on a card. So here we can do sure gamble. We could, in theory, endurance. I think we might want to do that. We can sure gamble. If we endurance, we go down to 4 credits. We don't have economy next turn. We need to keep their money down though. Man, I would love to be able to figure out how to keep the pre-show. Maybe it's worth paying. It's probably worth paying 2 credits to keep the pre-show with the self-modifying code. I'm regretting what we did. That pre-show would have been so much value. The fact that we got into our heap was way wrong. We could definitely play self-modifying code for 2 credits for that pre-show. Yeah, it feels bad. Okay. I think we'll just run server 7. If we diesel, we're not dealing, we have no run events that like sweeten this besides 1 overclock. Let's just see where to go here. We want to have a click left and we can't deal with code gates. It's a turnpike. Okay. So to host and break that, it's going to cost us just about as much as, you know, boosting into the tag or clearing the tag manually. So we'll let that fire. We lose a credit on encounter and it's trace 5. So we can pay 4 credits here or click in 2 credits. Click in 2 credits, it changes the Bologna math, but I'm not convinced that's a Bologna in their remote server. They probably won't be able to score it out next turn with a double seamless. And we've seen 1 so far and an anoetic. So 4, 5, 6 influence already. I just think we'll just take the tag. Actually, taking the tag is kind of bad when it hits an IP block, but at least we're teched for the IP block. We have a breaker. If we didn't have a breaker, we might have considered boosting there because IP block ends the run when you're tagged. And it's a very common barrier. There you go. Hey, speak of that. So we could have actually saved some money if we just paid for the tag there because we could have just gone through this for trace 2. So unfortunately, we're going to have to break it. It's only 2 credits and 2 power counters. So it's not too much worse. We just end up using the power counters sooner than we want to. That's an agenda. Yeah, crypto crash. Sick. All right, we're on game point. We're definitely on game point because they're probably running Bolognas. They're only on 2 credits. So they'll be on 6 next turn. I think we need to diesel. Ideally, the best draw off the top is a no free lunch. Amazing. And we'll just crack that on their turn. Okay, I'm going to throw out the last Aesop's Pawnshop. A bit regretful. If we lose this, we lose our entire economy engine. But as soon as their turn starts, we will crack this to clear the tag and then draw a card because it'll be their turn. Ah, another one. Fantastic. Again, the 3 of in this list. That's been just such a powerful card. They're drawing up. Again, we have a Stargate in the hand. There's a Spin Doctor on the table we'll have to deal with first. This remote server is kind of annoying. I do think, though, with 2 crypto crashes out, there's not too many agendas we're worried of them scoring. Ice on R&D respecting a bit, but I think there might be an agenda in hand as well. I don't think we're going to pawn anything here. If we pawn the Eca, we can get the the simul chip down and then actually get the Parisha out. That's actually probably fine. Like, we need the endurance sooner than later. Yeah, okay, we'll do that. Takobi with propeller is totally fine. Again, Cleaver works the same way. But I think here we could consider the endurance. I think we install the simul chip. We simul chip in the Prisha, probably. That we start taking down some of their money. Yeah, the question is how soon we transition to endurance. Are we comfortable to endurance? I think with the 3 credits in hand for the no free lunch, we are. We could also simul chip for a Harbinger, which actually is kind of more money. I'm assuming we're going to win before having to trash even more of their stuff. So I think I'm going to do that for better, for worse. We could first diesel, and maybe diesel. We have 2 in 16, so 1 in 8 chance. It's a bit more. Obviously, we're drawing 3 cards to hit a Harbinger. Yeah, there. Okay, that's worth it. All right, so we're going to install the Harbinger. We only have 2 clicks left, so we're going to have to discard some stuff. Simul chips on the table are actually pretty good right now, so I think we can install a simul chip, and then we can get a Parisha, and we can run server 5, the Spin Doctor Shuffle. I think that's totally fine. I think Rashida in server 7 makes a lot of sense. We can also just install the no free lunch, and because we're going to get our simul chip trigger next turn anyways. I think I want to keep this for tags. Takobi we won't need. Spec work, I don't know if the card draw is that necessary with 13 cards left in the stack. Mad Dash could matter, but I think they're on Bologna. So we have 1 install here and 1 discard. We're going to discard the Takobi. So our one install, it's either the simul chip or the no free lunch. I like the flexibility to no free lunch. I'm going to do that. And then on their turn, in theory, we could pop this for a card draw in 3 credits. I don't think it's necessary. Maryland shuffling back. I think next turn we're going to run the Spin Doctor, get down Stargate, run R&D. Hopefully close the game out with a Bologna. Oh, it's a regular. That's fine. They can have money. We didn't run, so we don't have to worry about the credit differential with hard-hitting news. Mind you, we have to keep a simul chip around so we can pull the misdirection when we need to. But they can have 17 credits, I think. Pretty okay. All right, I don't think we need to pop the no free lunch. So punch up this for 3 credits and a card. Order is not that important. Endurance? Do we endurance? I think we could consider endurancing run HQ. That will drop us down to 6 credits, so we can still steal Bologna. Yeah, let's try and transition into an end game. Oh, we should run Spin Doctor for sure. Key block, good to know. We'll run server 5, force a shuffle. And then if we install daily cast, like then we're really going down into low credits. So it is a bit easier for them to hard-hitting news us. So I don't love it. We have an Aesop's next turn. I think here we could consider running R&D. Last click, it's bad because if we hit a ping, it'll give us a tag and then, we can lose our Aesop's Pawnshop. Of course, we could no free lunch it. So it's maybe not the worst, but we just need to get enough credits to close the game with Stargate. We know 1 card from hand and the remote server is not really doing anything. They probably do hard-hitting news us here, which is totally fine. We just we like pawn, I don't know, maybe we install an oiler. But huge credit differential. The thing is like, it's cost us 2 clicks. Technically 3 clicks, so 2 clicks. But yeah, we end up probably pawning the propeller. Yeah, this is why like keeping the misdirection and not having removed from game, because this is our way to get out of like mass tag punishment, which is the one thing that NBN can do when there's a credit differential. Makes it look very interesting. Regolith, 25 credits, there's a hard-hitting news. I don't think this does that much. It slows us down, but I think it would be so much more impactful on their turn if they took 3 crits off the Regolith, installed something in the remote server that could be an agenda, and then did that. Because now this forks us. Here, there's no real fork. We just clear the tags. It just slows us down. But if they could use the slowdown, gotta make you use those chips for sure. If they could slow us down, funny enough, we could have actually reacted to the no free lunch before they popped the hard-hitting news, not during the trace, to force them to spend more. But I don't think it's going to be worth it. They have enough money to overspend. Okay, so here we're actually tempted to pawn the propeller, just because if we trash a program, the simul chip is easier to play. I think that's fine. So we're going to pawn a program. There you go. So now we can simul chip at no real cost because we've already trashed a program to get this down. We should plan the rest of our turn. That's the second hard-hitting news. Again, another one could show up at some point. So that's going to be 4 credits and 2 clicks. Here, we can always spec work that for gas. I don't think we need to. I think we're pretty far in control. There's only 1 more hard-hitting news. So we could run HQ to get a boat counter. That's probably fine. And then play another simul chip. Because again, if they hard-hitting news us, it's not amazing for them. And we have already something set up for Aesop. Seamless launch, good to know. And I think we're just going to install the simul chip, which we could actually use right now, but we want to keep these around in case we do need to, deal with the IP block or a ping. We could always use our endurance, that's for sure. But I don't know how they score out from here. The remote server doesn't do it. We have a way to deal with hard-hitting news, and that's the sort of thing these Shaper decks can do. They can play a toolbox and have a massive amount of ways to get through board stays. Okay, ice and remote server. This easily could be anything else besides an agenda. I do think an agenda push here would be reasonable, but I think we can just try and close the game off by transitioning to a Stargate. So we're going to pawn this. All right, spec work. We can always misdirection here. So here we can drop the Stargate down, go down to 4 credits. If we ever see a Bologna we have to win, we can just pop the no free lunch. All right, let's just try and close the game off. We're going to a bit too few credits here. We're not fully playing control. All right, so that we're going to lose a credit to, and then we're just going to endurance through it. It's a fair bit cheaper. This is a pretty good card for only 2 credits, right? Like it's one of the most common sentries you see in NBN lists. All right, Bologna in the bin. So now we need 5 credits to steal that. So we could do a lot of things. We can always just pop the no free lunch. We can't do credit. We could always spec work. I'm just going to pop the no free lunch and run archives. If there's a spin doctor in the remote server, we don't win. Good game. All right, we had it. Good game. Your early jams were sick. They had a deck that I think with Anoetic and the card draw from Near Earth Hub and things like Planogram actually could line up pretty well. Was relying on scoring that early crypto. Oh, for sure. Yeah, the early crypto that they pushed on the table, if we didn't check it, because like you have to make a read on your opponent, and our opponent was like pretty confident, understanding that we're Shaper, we have to set up, we have to spend more, time managing our economy engine, let alone the what's her name on the table, the teacher. Yeah, crypto Amani would have been sick. Yeah, disastrous. But yeah, from that point, we did get our economy engine up, and you see the value of this. It's very robust, it's very flexible, and this deck actually, you're going to see a fair bit at Worlds. There's obviously some concessions made, and a lot of this deck is a response to the meta with the 3 no free lunch, which, let me tell you, you can play Stone to Chart Room. It also falls into that sort of category of something you can pop in the dead matchups to give you good value, but this is just so good even in dead matchups. This has been a very powerful card. But that's the list. Again, Worlds is just in a couple of days, so there's not going to be anything else on this channel for maybe a week or so when we get back. If you're going to Worlds, come say hi, of course, and best of luck to all your games. If you're enjoying the stream, of course, everything will be streamed. Twitch.tv/nullsignalnetrunner. Link is going to be in the description below. But otherwise, we'll catch you in a bit. Here on the Métropole Grid, we are supported by Patreon. So I want to give a huge shout out to all the patrons that are supporting this channel, allowing me to spend more time making streams and videos, making content just like this. Thank you. And of course, I'm going to read the names of all of our Sure Gamble and higher tiers. So a huge thank you goes to Luke Dennis, Nathan Durant, Bookkeeper, Artem Mikhalitsin, Junkie Bong, Daniel Cook, Matthew Chanuel, Dan Bouchard, Matt Conduit, Joe T, Stefan Primal, Zane Shrev, Francis Fortin, Tim Ashton, Kat Shen, Icarium, Elliot Mobby, Kin Elwin, JC, Taekwon Dean, Alec, Henny Hebisha, Jalen Horm, Phil Ulrich, Crore, Jay Verrill, Dev Invincibility, Awesome Case, Andrew Robertson, Chris Watt, Sebastian Coes, Lucas, Jeff Bennett, Jason Gessner, Lee Butler, Clement Michal, Scott S., Arthur Pitt, Sebastian Colorado, Nathan Hutner, Spooky Noises, 222, Astrolad, Levi Corner, Spray, Chris, Izzy Stardust, I Feel Fine, Sauce, Ewan Milne, Shane Lilly, Encoder, Adam and Fish, Jenny, Dan Lewis, Sven Vazan, Andrew Jolly, Shane Devlin, Chris Mitchell, Zach Cruz, New Object, and Pierre Small. And of course, a huge thank you to all of our Daily Cast patrons. Your support is very much appreciated. And that should be it. Of course, we'll see you at Worlds. It's just in a couple of days. Hopefully you enjoy the stream. If not, enjoy your time in Toronto. And once again, look, wow, recommended content. Take care, y'all.